Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the committee of the whole, or thank you for coming to the committee of the whole meeting for Monday, September the 22nd. It is 6 p.m. Please note that this meeting is being recorded for public viewing. And with that, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved by Councillor Thor. Go ahead.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Reminded, motion carried. With that reminder, if you have conflict of interest this evening, please fill it out and pass it into the clerk's state reason. With that, we'll move on to new business. We're going to actually go with presentation from the Service Commission on presentation on accelerated dwelling units, and we'll have Caleb come up to the podium and do the presentation. Please welcome Caleb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is how I would control it.
If it works. So maybe.
It works exactly the same way as the one at the Service Commission.
Good one.
F5 and F5, that's right, you're on.
I mean, none of them have seen door.
Doesn't work.
Just goes opposite of where.
It's slideshow menu. So,
Wait, yeah.
from beginning.
Is it not working?
I think it goes opposite, I think it goes opposite of the way like you think it would go.
And it didn't want to work. No, it'll be this one.
That's okay, just,
We'll just advance it
you'll
further.
have to give us a heads up when we need to switch slides.
All right. Can switch slides now. So, detached accessory dwellings, also known as garden suites, across most bylaws in the region, are an accessory dwelling unit contained within a separate structure on the same parcel as the principal dwelling. These are sometimes referred to as granny suites, coach houses, or carriage houses. In some Western Canadian municipalities that have laneways, laneway coach houses and laneway suites are also common. There has been a growing interest in garden suites under the natural housing strategy. Yet when garden suites are permitted, the uptake is usually slow for reasons we will discuss ahead. Slide. We'll start by going through the history of garden suites and move on through how they are regulated locally, some challenges and opportunities for implementation, what the best practices are, before concluding with some questions and answers. Now, garden suites are not a recent idea. However, they have evolved considerably. Originally, garden suites were conceived as temporary structures aimed at senior citizens. More recently, however, they have gained traction for the general housing market as a form of gentle density that helps maintain neighborhood character. Next slide. It all starts with the 1984 Ontario demonstration project, which evaluated resident satisfaction of 20 or so test garden suites. Following successful results, between 1987 and 1988, a nationwide exposition project presented garden suites to 500,000 visitors. The model suite presented in Fredericton is pictured here. Throughout the 1990s, a number of provinces undertook feasibility studies on garden suites. While garden and laneway suites were slowly becoming more popular, the Housing Accelerator Fund brought new momentum to garden suites as they began to gain traction. The 2025 CMHC Housing Design Catalog also included 14 garden and laneway suites across the country. Next slide. So if we look at the region, 9 of 17 zoning bylaws currently in force permit garden suites. This includes Fundy Albert's 3 centers of Hillsborough, Riverside, Albert, and Alma, in addition to Petty Kodiak and Three Rivers. Kapakadi is the most recent municipality to permit garden suites in their 2025 bylaw. While Salisbury does not define garden suites, multiple dwellings are permitted in the town center and residential neighborhood services zone, in addition to the dwelling group zone. Despite the widespread permissibility, only 5 garden suite permits have been recorded in areas administered by Plan 360 since 2013, with the oldest having been issued in 2019. Next slide. Now, for provisions across the region, I've outlined the least permissive provisions in red, sorry, and the most permissive ones in green. The main trend to keep in mind here is that bylaws permitting larger garden suites necessitate larger setbacks, while bylaws with the smallest setbacks are also a bit more restrictive on the garden suites dimensions. Dorchester also has some provisions that state that the garden suite must be occupied by a relative or a caregiver and must also be removed from the lot after the unit is vacated. However, this could pose some legal challenges under the charter because it would be almost impossible for development officers to enforce. There are provincial and CMHC programs that limit occupancy to dependent relatives, but they also stipulate that there must be no rent charge, effectively removing them from the rental market and acting as an extension of the primary dwelling. Next slide. With some bylaws in mind, there are also some servicing challenges to be addressed, as servicing limited early forays into promoting garden suites. Now, starting with private septic systems, they're designed to neutralize a specific peak flow. This means that pumping an overcapacity system more frequently won't eliminate the problem of nitrate pollution. Depending on the capacity of the existing system or lot size, it may be possible to either connect to an existing septic system or add a second septic system to the lot. Within Salisbury's service boundary, that still depends on wells. Water quality and quantity are the main concerns here. A study on minimum lot size will address the availability of water. Next slide. As for building code, too small of a setback between the garden suite and the main dwelling would necessitate fireproofing, a scenario the bylaw should seek to avoid. Whether fireproofing is required or not depends on the area of the dwelling walls that face each other. Next slide. Now for financing, which is another challenge, in a survey of Edmonton homeowners, financing was identified as the greatest barrier for nearly half of respondents. For context, planning regulations, the second most cited challenge, only accounted for 15% of responses. Difficulty securing financing for such projects means that a significant portion of the funds must come from personal savings. This restricts their development to largely high-income, high property value neighborhoods. They are long-term investments that improve property value. There is a new refinancing mechanism announced by the CMHC, but it is largely targeted for relatives living on the same lot and no rent may be charged. Next slide. It also must be noted that garden suites are not a form of affordable housing and that they actually occupy the premium end of the rental market. The affordability that exists actually comes from the deliberate undercharging of relatives. A significant share of those who do build garden suites do so to downsize from their own property. And there may be some additional cost savings in this respect if it avoids having to pay for an assisted living facility. If we observe this graph from the Edmonton study, we can see that friends and tenants pay more than family members. Next slide. Beyond not qualifying for the full tax credit, detached accessory dwelling units would additionally raise the assessed value and taxes on a lot more than an attached accessory dwelling. Service New Brunswick's Granny Suite affidavit provides a tax credit for the detached accessory dwelling if the unit is portable, occupied by a relative, and no rent is being paid by the occupant to the landowner. Next slide. So permitting garden suites requires us to be cognizant of community needs. Some concerns include ensuring there is parking space in the absence of on-street parking, ensuring the design remains subordinate to the main use, and mitigating stormwater runoff and avoiding hazard areas. And finally, whether it actually aligns with the local housing needs assessment. Ontario is an example that took a heavy-handed approach and allowed garden suites across urban areas. while establishing minimum standards that municipalities must meet or exceed. Next slide. Again, within Ontario, the city of Mississauga is pretty generous and provides a full set of building plans for studio and one-bedroom models to expedite the building review. The applicants just need to provide the connection to utilities in addition to the drainage and site plans. Finally, as one of the more extreme cases, Whitehorse permits 2 garden suites per lot in certain built-up areas in its pursuit of permitting 4 dwellings per lot. And that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So that was a lot of information. All of which I don't know if necessarily pertains to what we're trying to accomplish. Because at the end of the day, more development means more revenue for the town. So I cannot see a possible downside to garden suites in general. Now, I'm sure that based on lot size, that a certain amount would have to be capped. In terms of if a lot's too small to support, you can't have a 75 square meter garden suite necessarily if it doesn't support, the land doesn't support that size. That may be a 2 or 3 story, I don't know how that would work. But as long as the property can accommodate whatever people are trying to build, I don't really understand why we need to get in the way of that. That's my personal opinion, but.
Yeah, don't think they're saying that they do this in the way, I think from what I'm hearing, maybe correct. It's not like there's a lot of financing challenges and a lot of different things to get these projects underway.
Yeah, essentially, from what I've studied before, as I was writing this report, is that where garden suites are permitted, it's generally more of a trickle than a big flood. Just because it is an expensive project and it might be comparatively more affordable to build an accessory dwelling in the basement or something like that. It's really targeted towards a specific market that either really wants it or can afford to do it.
You know, can you go back to your numbers again? You said that there's only been 5 since 2013?
That's right.
Last one's 2019.
So I think there's one in Petitcodiac, Mulster and Riverview. We've had some interest in garden suites here and there. But as in terms of actual applications, only 5, excluding Moncton and Dieppe.
So the affordability classification, so did you say that it does not fall under this affordability classification?
It depends on the situation. So on average, they are more expensive to rent. But there are, within a family, there are potentially savings, because often they're being rented to relatives at a reduced or no cost.
So with the funding that the federal government has, is there an upside to go this route? Like, are there rebates that are available for them under that? I guess I'm a little bit confused because I thought that was one of the advantages of this was so that there was some rebates that were gonna be available based on it falling under the classification of new affordable housing, et cetera.
Density.
Yeah, it definitely helps upzone the lot. So if you would be applying for, let's say, the Housing Accelerator Fund or something like that, in that case, that would be an additional unit permitted for the lot.
So it gets back to what I was saying to the minister on the weekend. If you're a community that has Housing Accelerator Fund, it's another bonus. You don't have that funding.
But my understanding is the funds go directly to the homeowner. They do not go to the municipality anyway. That's my understanding. We have to investigate that, but that is my
That would be
understanding on
through
that.
CMHC financing directly,
Yeah.
maybe?
That's why you're saying there's a good uptake though in Moncton, Dieppe. Or you're indicating there has been a good uptake on these type of units in Moncton and Riverview that you're aware of?
In Moncton and Dieppe, I'm not aware of any specific numbers. I do not know that they're encouraging it.
Yeah.
But in terms of what their uptake has been, I'm not sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Be interesting to find that out so that we can have comparison.
Just to Councillor Bannister's point too, the CMHC financing is I think what Caleb was mentioning on, like, you can refinance to add an accessory dwelling.
That's right.
That's, yeah.
And the-
So I guess the affordability question isn't necessarily the grant or the refinancing that's available, it's more so, I would say, just the cost of adding a detached dwelling, I think, that then if you're borrowing on that, you have to borrow to construct it, and it's probably not as feasible, I would say, is the affordability. The affordability argument, so it's probably not as, or I shouldn't say feasible, but not as cheap, I guess, or affordable as probably many would assume. Yeah. One question from our end, just because we've had a few inquiries, a couple of them, I would say, more persistent than others, some of which have gone like the attached dwelling route, so have like submitted permits and have gone that way. Is there like numbers, or is that not something that's tracked in terms of how many inquiries were made? So like numbers in terms of applications are minimal, but is there any information on inquiries, I guess, in the region?
We don't have a record of inquiries, but,
But
wouldn't inquiries be tempered by the fact that it's not allowed to begin with?
well, that was
So-
my question, yeah, or premise of the question, I guess, was exactly.
Not accurate, that in my opinion.
I can see the benefit to it, because a lot of these are gonna be families, are gonna be parents that are downsizing, that are moving on to one of their children's lots. And it's freeing up their house to be used by somebody else. But if it won't materialize in any actual units, there's not a whole lot of benefit going forward.
There's not really any hurt in doing
No,
it,
Exactly,
right?
there's
Like,
no different than building a garage on your property. Same footprint.
people wanna do it, they can.
Exactly, this is just more freedom to do whatever the hell you want. I don't see any downside to it.
Today with the garages that aren't allowed to have bedrooms in it. So if people are doing it now, if they're allowed to have bedrooms in it, they probably would do it. Right.
Would that cover converting a garage into a,
I was about to add that is actually for a garage, I mean, a garage isn't built for the standard of a house. So I actually have had requests that are similar, want to convert a barn or garage into a garden suite. Then it turns out they're going to need an engineer to have a look at that, and then it gets much more tedious than the applicant imagines before they do it.
Yes, and there's not a certain amount of those barriers just to avoid having to do some of that work. That you put up enough roadblocks that renovations don't necessarily make sense. And or costs, or my understanding is it doesn't qualify for the occupancy tax credit or something to that effect.
Oh, that's, yeah, any secondary unit,
Yeah.
so it's just the main dwelling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are already, in some of these instances, there's enough. It's not a barrier so much as it's just not as financially prudent. I don't know how you would say it exactly, but some of those roadblocks are already in place.
But do they qualify for a tax credit if it's a family member that's in, like if it was your in-laws?
Yes, but it's pretty stringent as well, because it has to be a temporary structure, you can't have rent collected from it.
Yeah, so that makes no sense.
And I guess to that point, there is an available
There is, yeah.
credits per se. It's probably a lot of hoops that you gotta go through, but
If those barriers weren't there, you could invest in something like that for a parent, and then eventually becomes an income property.
Yeah, if you wanted to, or whatever, I see no need to be as prescriptive as, that it has to be X, Y, or Z, or, you know, only in this scenario, or only for relatives, or only for caregivers. Who cares? I don't understand any need to be that tedious with it all.
so what is the process today? So if somebody is interested in doing one of these, they have to.
Yeah, right.
No, but they would have to request a rezoning request?
I mean, it's not even defined within the bylaw yet. I mean, it's, again, in some zones, like the town center zone, you are allowed multiple dwellings on the lot already.
Well, just like when we're talking about the current uptake, we wouldn't expect any uptake if it's not allowed anyway, so.
So just to elaborate on that a little bit, what would have to happen if they didn't fall in one of the current zones that allow multiple dwellings on the lot? Then they would have to be looking at a text amendment to incorporate it into the bylaw to allow the detached dwelling. From there, that's when council should be considering these aspects of the reliance on private water sources. So ideally, we have a study currently underway, which would look at, water quantity in the serviceable area, for sure. The other things that you would look at as part of process when you're considering possibly changing your bylaw would be to look at the current developed lots and the size requirements and what's left to be buildable. So we often have requirements as well on your low density residential that says, for instance, you can't occupy more than 50% of the lot coverage. That there's a number of regulations that could already be incorporated into the bylaw that could eliminate significant amounts of development from that perspective, because the lot area isn't there, especially in our older sections of the former village where you had smaller, more densely developed lots. So I would say if it's a direction that you're going to want to consider beyond the initial report, of just kind of laying out all the data for you, that there's a number of other steps that we should start to investigate before getting into that.
So to that point, if I understand this correctly, because I was reading through it already earlier, are you not advocating for garden suites in the rural areas? The less densely populated areas, like that was one of the, I think I read that through there, that this would be more for the former village. The gardens.
There could be a potential to add them into the unincorporated, or sorry, the unserviced areas. The thing you have to think of there is kind of, and Caleb had highlighted it in the report, that there becomes the potential that you have to have multiple septic systems to accommodate them on a
Yes.
single lot. Sometimes if you're at the minimum lot size, you may not be able to accommodate.
No, I-
So again, they're all just kind of, different variations that you would want to look at. So, you know, in some cases, a municipality that's going to allow it in a non-serviced area may look at rules around the idea of having them placed in a manner that they could be subdivided on these
Yeah.
large lots.
And that's exactly my point, is the goal to subdivide in the rural area more so than add these garden suites.
Yes, ideally, because when they are shared on a lot, as we've seen from the tax components that he pointed out, they're not really getting a tax incentive. Whereas if it's on its own, it's standalone lot
Yeah.
and it's owner occupied, well, then of course they're getting the tax incentives.
So is that to deal with the way the government is set up as, or has the tax settings for two separate lots versus one with a garden suite? That you're trying to facilitate the tax aspect of it?
No, I would point out the tax component, just so that people are aware before they get into putting one of these other lots and then getting nailed, after the fact. So a lot of this kind of like given the aspect of, you know, if it's, not permanent, then they're eligible for other incentives.
Mhm.
Those are all details that somebody going into this should be aware of before they put the second structure on a permanent foundation and then find out after the fact that so there's a large education component to it as well.
I understand what you're saying, but at a certain point, people are free to do what they want ideally, and if they want to do things that are more expensive for them, I mean, I don't see any real repercussions, even with the septic. If it ends up causing issues with their septic, they will then have to then redo or improve upon their septic. I don't see that as really prescriptive necessary from our perspective. If they have issues, then they're gonna have to solve their issues.
Generally, when you're writing a bylaw, though, you don't write something in that you know could be problematic for citizens, because it's meant to apply to everybody.
I understand that you're trying to head off some of these issues.
Yeah.
Within the building code and within engineering and whatnot. I'm not disputing that, but I just don't see any need to be overly prescriptive if you can get away with increasing housing, increasing property taxes in general. Within reason, that's maybe what I was saying.
I mean, there's always still that aspect that you're gonna wanna make sure that you have not compromised water and sewer for the surrounding property owners around them as well, by increasing density, by potentially doubling the number of units. But again, that's where setbacks come into play, that's where, water.
And the lot size can only accommodate such a size, like that, that's where I understand where you had to be restrictive in your garden suite size, because if the lot doesn't carry, you can't build more than what the land accommodates. But
So when somebody is renovating and so they're adding this garden suite. You guys have regulations in there currently that, X amount of bathrooms per X amount of square foot for the septic system.
That is the provincial regulation.
Right.
That, your number of septic system, or your size of your septic system is based on the number of bedrooms.
Correct.
So as long as your, bedrooms are not totaling,
So I guess if you're applying to add a suite, a garden suite, does that rule come into play? Like, would they be assessing that? Okay, well, they're adding 2 more bedrooms, they've already got 5, therefore, this is a spot. There's a gap here, we need a bigger septic field.
Yeah, I did reach out to the Director of Technical Inspections, just to clarify that specific
Yeah.
point. And he said it really depends on the situation for the lot size, what's already there. So he said they couldn't give me
So they're
a,
just gonna waive that rule?
they're just.
No.
they have to- application before they move in.
So there is, okay.
I think the reason why you probably couldn't get a clear cut answer is most people build a 3-bedroom house. So the standard size septic system that goes in is the capacity to hold 3 bedrooms.
two
The
baths.
newer
So,
ones, the newer-
however, some people only put in a 2-bedroom,
Right.
and therefore they have an extra bedroom technically that they could be allotted for on that same septic system. So if they came in with a 1-bedroom detached dwelling, well, that probably could use the same septic system. If it's over that, now they're looking at incorporating another septic system, and there's separation distances that kick in from wells.
Right.
The other systems, the ability to contain your field on there.
So this is where I'm just trying to get the clarification. So Plan 360 has a responsibility to that when the application goes in for the building permit.
Yeah.
So we really don't have to have it in a bylaw to say,
Well,
Right.
you wouldn't write that into the bylaw. So, because that is a requirement on a septic system that we cannot issue a permit. If you come in with a
Right.
5-bedroom house
you're
and
gonna,
only a septic system for a
Right.
3-bedroom, we say you can't.
Yeah,
right, so
But that-
you have the rules there.
but that's relative to if it was a 1-acre lot versus a 5-acre lot. Like, it's gonna be completely different.
Everyone's gonna have to be assessed, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, we don't have, your point on, people just can't do it right now,
Right.
so.
So
First
to
step
me,
is,
open it up.
the first step is for us to open it up.
Yes,
Yeah.
Then
and
we can work on some of the, lack of a better term, red tape and all the things we have to do.
minimize it and make it as
So
wide as
what are
possible.
our next steps?
I think just on that, like, Lori had mentioned it, any change would involve a text amendment, which is not an overnight thing, so I would not want to do a text amendment unless Plan 360 was comfortable with the next step. So I think there's pieces that Lori had mentioned that there would be some other due diligence that needs to be looked at. Because like we've seen with text amendments in general, like it's a long process and governed by provincial legislation as well. The main piece and not necessarily the rationale for the report, but the rationale for us having Caleb come and present it was that during the consolidation process for the former Westmoreland Albert Borough Plan and the former village bylaw, during that consolidation process, it was asked about both from a member of the public, but also by some members of council to basically explore this, which this was already kind of started. So that's why we're bringing it today. So to Lori's point, like if there is a desire or an appetite amongst council to go beyond the report and discussing the report, then I think we have to figure out what next steps that entails from Plan 360's perspective. But I would say there's no recommendation on this.
Yeah, there's no motion tonight or recommendation,
But if council desire is, then I would say they
I
direct
think-
us for
I think we,
To that point, the text amendment, does that have to, like, what's the fastest way to get this done? Is it that you make some whatever customized reinventing the wheel thing here, or do you just copy one of the other ones that already have done, copy their bylaw and be done with it?
Doesn't speed up the text amendment piece anyways, because the text amendment requires the public hearing, the notifications under the act, 3 readings of the bylaw, registration by the minister. No, not for text amendments. Okay, so that saves one step.
I'm
So
not
there
done
you
with
go.
the municipal plan.
Okay,
So this is
So-
3 months at the earliest.
at least, yeah, that's a fast one. We only, because it has to be done in regular council meetings, like our bylaw.
so
meetings.
compared to where we moved before.
Is there time in before we have to go into caretaker mode?
For, April, yeah, we have a rezoning being processed right now and that an application that I think finishes in February, I forget. I'm using that as an example. We have an application for something unrelated, but I'm just thinking of the timeline, like that brings us from now till February, I think. So yes, there's still time. And then
Have not fallen why that's relevant.
I'm just thinking of timeline. He asked if like, if we were to start it today as an example, like that application that we're just starting to process
Oh.
goes till February already, so.
Caretaker mode in April.
Right. Right. So the question is just on timing around that. So if an application were to start being processed today, hypothetically, that one wouldn't go to February though, because that one includes a municipal plan amendment. So it would go till December for sure, probably January.
No, I will say that when you're changing something like this and you're incorporating something, it takes a little bit longer to draft the bylaw. So it's not the same as somebody has an application and then you're just assessing that. This is adding additional text and a new permitted use to. So you want to take a little bit more time to draft that to make sure you don't have conflicting regulations within the existing bylaw too. So it's
Would our current bylaws be that different from say Dorchester or something to that effect, like?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a wide variety of bylaws. I mean, you guys also had a lot of the municipalities that do incorporate them have both public sewer and public water. So, you have to, that's why you can't just cut and paste theirs into yours. So you guys have only public sewer in some areas. Some areas you have large areas of rural, you would have to kind of just look at all the regulations that you have in place and just make sure you're not creating a conflict there.
Does Quebec, do you have a water system?
No.
In the core, but
Okay.
not most of it.
Okay,
And they do permit it essentially everywhere.
okay. That might be probably, because that's the most recent, that's probably the most comparable, but there'd still be a million things,
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating, many things that could be, different. So I would say, like, in terms of next steps, like I said, there's no formal recommendation because it was a report for information, but if council does want to direct us, then I would say someone moves a motion for that and then,
Yeah, I'd like to give direction tonight, so we can still do that.
I'll move that we move forward with Garden Suite text amendment so that we're able to facilitate Garden Suites in the town of Salisbury.
so I would say the motion will be to direct.
Correct.
Direct staff I move that we direct staff to implement Garden Suites for the text amendment.
Explore, I would say direct staff to explore text amendments.
If you're not gonna give me the script, it will be ad libbed.
Take what you get.
Direct staff to explore text amendments for ADUs. Is that fine? Or you're fine?
Detached ADUs.
Detached
But you
ADUs,
Currently
right.
allow
Attached.
attached, except.
Okay,
Moved by Counselor Dyke.
is that okay with you?
Yes, that's
Okay.
good.
Second by Counselor Bannister. Questions?
Get it done.
All in favor?
Uh,
I'm sure you're minded. Again, you have direction.
Thank
Thank you very much, Caleb. I appreciate it. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. With that, we'll now move on to item 4.1, Salisbury, or it'll be 4.2 now. Salisbury Fire and Rescue. We'll ask Chief McLeod to come up and provide an update on what's been going on.
Our clicker's not working, so you're gonna have to give Diana a magic cue of some sort.
This will be the nod. Super discreet. Hey, thanks everybody for having me here today and we'll go through, the latest information on Q1 and Q2 of this year for Salisbury Fire and Rescue.
Quiet.
So, and that's Q3 problems.
Okay.
Next slide. So just the roster size has remained the same, but there's been a few slight changes. I don't have a highlight here, but Ron McCachran was recently promoted to captain, filling the vacancy we had there after the passing of Tim Dryden. Ron comes from Riverview. He's had 45 years of experience. He was a captain in Riverview. He's a captain at the airport on the fire brigade there. And he'll bring a wealth of knowledge to our leadership team within Salisbury Fire. So it was well received. Everybody's really positive about it and excited for that change. The 3 firefighters that I have highlighted there have recently completed their firefighting level 1 course. So they're all done that. Now they got their level 1 blocks in. They're now just getting their sign offs and they'll be on their way getting their certificate. So it's good there. I did sneak in a bit of Q3 stats, but you can see we were at 125 calls by the end of August. We're at 137 right now, so there's still another 12 that's in September that's not there. But when we're running on an average of just under 15 calls a month, August has been a very, very busy month, and September has been very, very busy as well. And really all those calls in August really started in the second half of August. So it was a very, really busy second half of August. No surprise that it was fires. Were primarily the calls that we were seeing. That there in gray is what we finished last year at. So we've already exceeded what we've had in fires for last year already this year. And that will probably keep going for a little while longer. MVAs, we're still just below, but we're probably going to exceed that for year end. We're trending to be above where we were last year. Before we get to the year end, medical alarms, those have remained the same. Mutual aid calls will be probably higher this year, and then the other being with bull fires and the falls.
Your
Within target.
Your uptick in fires, is it mostly exterior fires, like brush fires and stuff like that, or is it structured fires?
Yeah, we had a combination of both, but it's a lot of wildland fires and grass fires. That's being the biggest culprit, but even structure fires, we had several structure fires during that time.
Brad, the alarms inside the school, where else would you respond to alarm calls?
We just had an alarm call for, I believe, a commercial building there today, just down the road.
Just whoever has the
Yeah.
ban.
Yeah,
Whoever
that
has the
was-
panels and
That was our building.
Was it?
Yeah.
I think that's the address. I just know.
Yeah. It's our building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the alarm-
those are the examples. The school, typically when we get into the fall, when the heaters start to come on, we tend to get a lot of alarms coming from the school, but the Tammy's been working really hard to kind of clean that up, and get maintenance done in advance.
that's to that.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay. Attendance wise, attendance has been really good, still pretty strong, so no complaints there. We do have, from what I can read there on the slide, and I probably should have brought my own slide there to read. But I do want to note the top members in the last 12 months. So Captain Roy Steves has 75% attendance, which is a lot if you think about it, especially with all the calls that we've had. Firefighter Justin Smith at, I think, 68. Correct me if I'm wrong. And Captain Brad Doucette as well as 68. He's right back there. And firefighter Brandon McLeod, he got 63, and then engineer Brent McLeod also 63.
If you can really read that, your eyesight is in
I'm actually got an appointment to go see the doctor because I can't read this close. I can read anything far away. I can't read anything in front of me. So
That was family.
yeah. Okay, next slide. So based on the calls, you can see the top graph being the time of day the calls come in. Primarily during the weekdays, that first bucket there. So that's the one we really want to focus on, making sure we have lots of responders. The bottom chart below being responders. Ideally, we want to be above 7. That gets us out at least 2 trucks out. We get a fully stacked engine going out with that. And then we get some tankers able to go out. So that's ideally where we want to be. We're just above 7. So we would like to see that one go up, but, it's not that bad. The rest of them all look pretty good in their respective buckets. We have plenty of people during the days, weekend, or evenings and weekends. This was the new chart I showed you guys last time, showing the calls, the whole duration. So Q2, much smaller, but call volumes were down in Q2, and they were, much more, they were simpler calls, so there was a lot of time spent on those calls. I expect when we see Q3, we're gonna see that number shoot right up. Just this weekend, we were like, I think it was 6 hours on the call we had on Sunday, so. We'll have more of those. And that's it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you as always.
I like to talk.
Surprise.
Do you? With all the fires you have been having, is there any limitations or issues you're seeing in terms of water due to the lack of water kicking around?
Water is still a challenge. We were worried yesterday that our water source, we weren't gonna have enough water, and luckily we did. We were planning out for an alternative source. We know down here at our own hydrant, it's getting kind of sketchy. Some of the water we were getting out of there was pretty bad, but you know, just walking through the trail there looks to be still a fair amount of water in there. But yes, there are challenges. And water was a problem for us on Sunday as well.
That's what I'm afraid of with these kind of drought type situations, on top of the fact that it's, again, just more likely to have fires to feed in it, and then the lack of water to fight them.
So a couple lessons learned for us, with the water, when it came to the wildland, we weren't quite as prepared, to fight some of the wildland fires when we're away from the trucks, right? So DNR has portable pumps that they have. We have a portable pump, but it weighs a ton. And I know DNR is in a campaign to supply portable pumps to the departments, but it's on a priority basis, and we're probably not there high on the priority list versus some of the other departments that are out in very rural locations. But it's one of the things that we're thinking maybe we want to invest and get something sooner, like something sooner rather than later. As well as when we're looking at the pumps we use for the volume that we need, such as on the call we had on the weekend, we relied heavily on Peg's pump because they could put out way more volume. They've invested a lot into their portable pump. And we're thinking, especially now that we've got the new tanker, that maybe we need something bigger to supply our trucks. And we had Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe bring their tankers, which are just as large as ours, so you need a lot of volume water to get.
Keep that moving.
Yeah. So we relied on their pump, which is great. That's the whole point of mutual aid. And we're ready with Moncton to go start making our way to Magnetic Hill if we were running out of water, to start pulling from hydrants in town. But it would be good to also have something for ourselves, put out that high volume. So in case of a pinch, we could at least get started and get set up before having to wait for mutual aid to show up and set up water source.
Well, and the biggest thing, if you have that volume of water at the beginning of the fire, you're more likely to put it out quicker than having to put the resources into a whole bunch of firefighting and everybody showing up.
And the new tanker has been fantastic. It is worth its weight. We had a house fire on Byron Ingalls Road, and that tanker came with all that water, and we knocked that fire down. A lot of times we'll knock the fire down with what's on the engine, and then we're waiting on water. It all reignites and we lost all the progress with that. It was just continuous. It got knocked down and we were in really good shape. We had no issues with that structure fire with water at all.
Because I still go back to the fact that I'd like the idea of dry hydrants, and that you have an area to go in and out, pull water quickly, get back out and go again. It just makes a lot of sense to me, and quite frankly, I'm a little bit probably biased in terms of I have property I don't think that's even up.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and that is something that we've talked about in the past. that it is something that, would be a benefit.
Large structure fires,
Yeah.
you need a lot of water.
Yeah.
And to have that rapid access is.
Yeah.
The big
Makes
trick.
it makes it a lot quicker than taking a pump down into the,
Going to go cut the ice or going to go, like, it's A, dangerous, and B.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
There's the willingness to invest, it makes sense to invest, just to make sure that things do not progress into a big wildfire that takes a
Exactly.
good chunk of the town.
Yeah.
Do your operations change any as you move into the new building?
They will definitely change. There's gonna be some learning, some lessons learned once we get in there, and we're just gonna have to, adapt.
Do you anticipate increasing members or?
I do, and I'm already starting to see it, like I have, several members that have reached out in the last couple of weeks, to join. Right now, I'm kind of putting that all on pause. We do have 2 vacancies right now. And I'm waiting for, late October, early November, and we'll go through and interview them, and kind of different than what we've done in the past, whereas we've had vacancies, someone fills out an application, you want to join, show up, you're there, right? Now we'll have a list of candidates to apply. We'll be able to interview and pick some good candidates for the roles.
Do you have an estimate on the cost of the portable pump?
I don't have at this time.
Something we're okay with budget?
Not for next year, but we can, it's not on the list right now, I should say, but
Yeah.
I can definitely explore it.
And it's something the association's kind of talking about as well, right?
Okay.
Well, let's not go outside, let's not.
Move that from the record. But this is just something, lesson learned, like, right from yesterday, like, things that we talked about.
Again, it just highlights the point on the water source for our community as well. Now more than ever, we need that. Thank you very much, Chief. If there's no additional questions.
I have one piece that I want to add just while he's here, and it's timely. So we thought we would do it kind of on the record tonight, but as of about 1:45 this afternoon, the hall's been deemed substantially complete, which is a significant milestone finally. Yes, very exciting. So that does not mean that trucks roll in tomorrow, but it is a big milestone. The next couple of weeks we'll finish up deficiency list. Commissioning's been mostly completed. Training starts here in the next couple weeks. They're just waiting for the last final stages of commissioning to be completed. Construction keys come out tomorrow and get replaced with permanent keys, and then we can kind of get permanent access beyond kind of arranging things now around trades and sub-trades or in subcontractor story. So just logistically, it also, that date or today's date, starts a number of paperwork and logistical items for Diane and I, mostly in terms of, reports and highlights for both FCM and the boring board. So we're full tilt ahead on getting those things finalized, for both the boring board and FCM, but, a big day, and, details are gonna be forthcoming on an updated date for a grand opening that will be in early November. We're just kind of waiting on confirmation on attendance from, there's reps from both, the federal government and FCM that will be attending. So we're just waiting on confirmations there as to who it will be and when they're available. And then obviously, last but not least, a huge thank you to council for the patience through the project. It's been a big one, to the chief and his crew for their extra patience, as we've been watching the building go up and become more and more eager. And then internally to our crew, especially Diane and Trevor, who have had roles often behind the scenes. Some big numbers come through for Diane to process, and Trevor's obviously, he'll probably be busier than us with the paperwork in the next couple weeks for training. And then for the fire department's crew that was instrumental on the front end to kind of design or give the input into design and let the design team take it from there. So a big day that I thought we would put on the record kind of tonight, since the chief was here, but more details to come. Obviously, it was a fresh thing this afternoon, and an exciting milestone for sure.
Very much, sir.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
So now we're going to move on to, as much as you're exciting, now a very exciting thing. Did you need a recess before we start, Ms. Thorne? All right, we're gonna be moving on to item number 4.3, the presentation of the Southeast Regional Service Commission 2026 budget, with Ms. Stephanie Thorne, CFO of the organization. So you may know. She's now recused herself from the seat, to go up to the podium.
Right, here we go. Hi, hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you again for another invitation to come and share the 2026 budget proposal for the Service Commission. Unfortunately, Roland LeBlanc, the CEO, sends his regrets, but I am here to run through his slides as well, which will be fun for all of us. So if we can move on to the next first slide, perfect. So just as a reminder of the Service Commission that the town of Salisbury is a part of, we are the Southeast Regional Service Commission. We're made up of 12 municipalities and 1 rural district. We comprise 25% of the New Brunswick's total population, which means that we're a very large service commission. And so Roland likes to say that we are the hub of the Maritimes. We have, that is hard to see far away, more than 30% of New Brunswick's tax base falls within our boundaries. 50% of building permits in 2023 came inside the Southeast Service Commission. So a lot happening within our Service Commission. On the next slide, it kind of shows, it's not a great picture because it doesn't have all of our members. There were some deputies that were at this meeting, but these are the members that came to our last retreat that we had. Oh, I don't need them all right. I have my own slides here in a couple seconds. Anyway, this is the last retreat that we had. There was a strategic planning session with the board. So we do go and take the board outside of the region to really focus their time and energy. And I'll talk more about that. But those strategic sessions have become pivotal for the staff of the Service Commission. We have a highly complex region because we do have urban and rural, Anglophone, Francophone, 2 health networks, 4 tourism associations, 5 chambers of commerce. So we as a Service Commission are really trying to bring everyone together to collaborate, whereas perhaps in the past they were more siloed. So we have what could be said to be the region that shouldn't work, but it does work extremely well. So we're extremely thankful to Mayor Campbell and all the mayors who sit on the board of directors because they truly put on their regional hats when they step inside of the Service Commission doors. And it is extremely helpful to all of us as we are trying to work more collaboratively together. In the next slide, you can see, this is because you had this in advance, I won't run through all of these, but we've given a list of what's been done since 2023, which is when reform took place, and some big changes happened throughout. One of the ones that I'll highlight here is that we did complete our 3-year regional strategy, which was a 2024 to 2026 regional strategy. So we'll be working on that in the coming years to update that. We have a fully assembled leadership team now, meaning that all directors are in place for all of the new services that were brought in 2023. So we're very excited about that. It's a very strong team that works really well together. On the next slide, it also shows some of our projects. We do have a new website and branding for the Southeast RSC. There's some awareness campaigns that are happening throughout the region. So you might have seen some billboards on the side of the road. And we're using our website in a really exciting way, I would say, especially on the tourism side of things, where you can go and municipalities have an opportunity, and any group really has an opportunity to advertise any of their events on this regional tourism website, which is kind of like a sub-site to our main site. But anyway, there's some really exciting things happening in terms of communications as well. So I'll move us right along. What's coming for 2025 and 2026? I'm going to skip this slide because I talk about it a lot in all of my slides. So we'll just move right along. And here we come. Keep moving. Yeah, great. Here we are. These are my slides. So this is where the budget consultation and the budget proposal starts. Budget consultation, I like to just touch on this. As I mentioned, we do have our strategic planning sessions with the board of directors. We also really value the input from the CAOs and CFOs. So we have a strategic planning session with them as well throughout the year. And that is all early spring to help move us into the budget period. Then we bring all of those groups back together separately, but they come back together in July for a budget working session and then begin the presentations of the proposed budget In our bylaws, we do require that the presentation goes to the Finance and Budget Committee, and then they make the recommendation to the board to accept the proposal as presented. So that happens. We also present it to the Executive Committee, which comprises of the chair, the vice chair, and the past president. So it's always important for us to make sure that we have a large number of board members who are well aware of the proposal prior to taking it to the board to get their buy-in and recommendation. So if we go to the next slide, what we heard out of all of that consultation that I mentioned was that municipalities are nervous about the assessment freeze for 2026. And so lower fees where possible was like the main recommendation that we had from CAOs and the mayors and the CFOs. So pretty much everyone wanted to see lower fees where possible. Also to continue maximizing the fund stacking opportunities with the Regional Service Support Fund, which was introduced in 2023. And then, as always, the board encourages us to continue finding ways to work collaboratively throughout the services so that we're constantly providing better services for all residents of Southeast New Brunswick. On the next slide, this shows what this means for Salisbury. So minimal increase for existing mandated services is proposed for Salisbury, so a 0.88% increase or just over $4,000. We were able to reduce the costs on several of the services, but as you know, costs are increasing for you, they're also increasing for us. So we did the best that we could to balance that out to ensure that it was a minimal increase where increases needed to happen. So we're really excited about a $4,000 increase on those existing mandated services. And then for Salisbury, there's also an opportunity to participate in some potential shared services that have been recommended by some members. So we'll talk about those later in the presentation. Moving on, I mentioned briefly the Regional Service Support Fund. It was introduced in 2023 to provide regional service commissions with money to help offset some of the costs to municipalities for the new services that were being introduced. In 2026, there are some changes coming to the Regional Service Support Fund. The biggest ones being that instead of increasing year over year based on the community funding grant, the envelope for the whole province will be capped at $18 million, meaning each service commission will receive a portion based on population tax base, but it likely will not increase as dramatically as we have seen in the past years, because now for the whole province, we're capped at 18 million year over year. There was also some flexibility that came with the changes, which we're excited about, and we're kind of monopolizing on. But anyway, we're taking advantage of as best we can. And then a third change that happened that doesn't really affect us this year, but there is an opportunity now for, and I didn't list it here, but there's an opportunity for service commissions to use up to 25% of their full RSSF allotment for regional cost sharing of regional infrastructure. So we don't have any regional infrastructure projects currently, or that we are foreseeing in the next couple of years. So I left it off of here, but that is an opportunity that's available to us going forward.
What are some of the other service commissions have for infrastructure?
What do you mean?
That we don't have any infrastructure, what are some of the other?
St. John.
Oh, St. John,
Center,
yeah.
the Aquatic Center, the Trading Convention Center. Fredericton trying to do the pool for infrastructure cost sharing. When it started, the province had a list for each area. Originally on the list of that, Avenir Center, the Capitol Theater, the Curling Club, the Aquatic Center, and Dieppe. As mayors of the entire region, we met and collaboratively agreed we would start in our region with a blank slate. We would come up with formulas and rationale on how we work together, not to burden the taxpayers, which we all came to agreement on. We took everything off the list, unlike some other areas that have.
Yeah.
So in the Sussex area, for instance, Butternut Valley, they pay infrastructure cost sharing for, Arena and Sussex for.
The library.
The library, the Arena too.
Over into.
Library.
Aquatic Center?
Maybe it's the Aquatic Center.
Yeah,
Maybe it's the Aquatic
maybe,
Center.
I
Maybe
didn't.
it's the Aquatic Center. So that type of thing, so it is affecting a lot of the different areas. Us as a region, but to Stephanie's point, we are the biggest region and we have been successful through collaboration. We're not going too fast and taking our time. So we've come up with some rationale or. So I think from an intake perspective, as, as communities would bring something forward, it doesn't necessarily automatically mean it's going to be cost shared. There's regional or there's sub-regional aspects to it. But, how please qualify 20 minutes versus 40 minutes?
So this infrastructure, you're talking like for the whole versus each individual aspect.
Right, so with this service of regional infrastructure cost sharing, it's that municipalities are able to request that their building be deemed a regional infrastructure, and that would require cost sharing from municipalities outside of their municipalities. But it also gives up a bit of the control with that. So if you're planning on attending our session on Saturday, which I highly encourage you to, there will be a big discussion on it. I mean,
So would like Eco 360 be considered one of those regional?
no, it's more like if you're building a rec center or a pool, that like if you're building that in Riverview, let's say, but Salisbury is close to that and Salisbury residents might use it, or do we fall inside a catchment area where Salisbury would be required to participate in cost sharing? So as Mayor Campbell said, our region decided that we were gonna start with a blank slate, not look at existing infrastructure, only look at future infrastructure. And at this point in time, nobody's brought forward any regional infrastructure projects that they wanted to have put into that schematic.
Okay.
But again, we'll talk more about it on Saturday if it's done. It doesn't preclude in the future, though, if an existing facility was coming up for upgrades, that
Right.
somebody couldn't come forward and indicate that they deemed it to be a sub-regional or regional facility that impacts, but again, that's something.
Future problems for future
Yeah.
councils.
I think we've come up with some good rationale to allow people to go on,
Leave that hot potato alone.
Yeah,
hopefully.
so that's the Regional Service Support Fund. I'm sorry, can you slide back just for 1 second? So all of those changes to say that because of the new cap of 18 million on the Regional Service Support Fund envelope for the province, our service commission is seeing a decrease in our allocation for 2026 by just over $200,000. So we are losing a bit there, but because of the flexibility that's been introduced, we're able to make up for it, I would say. On the next slide, this is just showing what we are using for RSSF money within our budget. So we have an allocation for 2026 of 3.5 million. We have carryover amounts from 2025 as well as 2024. You are able to carry over these amounts for 3 years. So the 2024 carryover amount does need to be used in 2026. So we've included carryover amounts to bring us up to 5.68 million that we're using of RSSF funds in the 2026 proposed budget, which is great news because we'll take all the money that we can to help offset costs to members. On the next slide, you'll just see I find this slide really interesting, is how much we're able to pay or how many activities we're able to budget with using RSSF money and stacked money, and what that would cost to members for this. So we have just under $16,000 in budgeted activities in 2026, where members are paying $705,000, whereas RSSF is covering that 5.68 million, and then stacked funding is 9.35 million. So in that stacked funding, that is revenues that are coming in from provincial and federal partners. So we have 1.5 million coming in from Working MB. We have money coming in from ACOA. We're also including fundraising money in this because for the new trail, we are looking to start our fundraising campaign in 2026, and we're estimating about 4 million in fundraising funds for that, for the naming rights. Not just for the naming rights, but to include it in that, or the naming rights for the Scoodic River Bridge, which I'll talk about a little bit. So those stacked funds really help us, the outside funding as well as the RSSF, to be able to provide such a large amount of budgeted activities for a small cost to members, which we're really happy about.
5%.
Yeah, it's good, right? You happy?
Excellent.
Excellent. I'm going to tell everyone that you like. Okay, next slide.
I stand for approval.
So here, I'll quickly run through all of our operating funds, which, as you know, we operate with fund accounting, so each service is a separate fund. Starting with the corporate services fund, this is seeing a bit of a jump in budget from 2.9 million to almost 3.3 million, but this does not get included in the cost to members. That is, it's paid for by other services, so we don't include this fund in our budget total or the cost to members, but I like to highlight it because it is such an important service. So this is where the CEO, the finance department, HR department, we have communications, IT. So we have a lot of things that are helping all of the other services fall under the corporate service fund. Some budget highlights for 2026 include some software improvements. We have 2 new full-time employees that we're adding to the budget, and then we've made some, if you've looked at the detailed reports, we've made some changes to insurance allocations, all really internal things to help improve the services that we're providing to our other services. 2026 initiatives include continuing with the RSC awareness campaign that I had mentioned, continued work on to improve our communications. That is one thing that the mayors on the board of directors are constantly saying, is that we're doing good with communication, but we can always do better. And in terms of communication, that's internal and external. So we will continue with that, working to improve that. And then some internal improvements for staff as well. And that's things like our telecommunication system is getting pretty old. So we just have some improvements to make. The next service is Eco360, which is the one most people are most familiar with. This is our biggest budget because it does operate as a commercial business. So it is jumping by 3.08% up to 23 million. The cost of Salisbury is based on the number of residential units that are collected within the municipality and taken to the site to be either sorted or taken to the landfill. So as your residential units increase, you will also see an increase on the total cost for you for this service. Highlights for this include the residential rate is remaining the same. So last year, you might remember that we had dropped it from $56 down to $44 because the blue bags no longer belong to the Service Commission. They belong to Circular Materials with the introduction of the PPP program. So that's going to stay at $44 for 2026. Our ICI rate is the industrial, commercial, and institutional waste. That rate we are increasing to $135 per ton. It's currently $129. This is again to encourage in the nicest way possible, the commercial businesses, to sort their waste. So we're increasing that to 135. And then we have a new debenture for 2025, that's quite large as we are building 2 new cells right now. So the landfill is at the end of its row. So we're building the cell that was needed. And then because it's at the end of the row, we build kind of a slanted cell. So we built 2 at the same time, to save on cost for that. And that's roughly a $5 million project, so we're going for a new debenture there. Initiatives for 2026 include implementation of waste sorting for multi-residential units, so that's your apartment sorting. It's been agreed by the board that they would like to see draft bylaws of what that would look like in each of the municipalities to make this a requirement now within each municipality, so that's taking place now. And then we're in continued talks with Circular Materials for changes that are to come in 2027 as they continue rolling out the PPP program, so that we know that changes are coming for us. We just don't necessarily know what they are yet. So it's making it very difficult to plan for the future for Eco360 right now. The next slide I find really interesting. It does show, because I mentioned that we are commercial, Eco360 is run as a commercial business. It shows that the contribution per members is pretty low in funding the entire service. We see the bulk of the revenues coming in from the ICI waste at 47.15%. So as you can see, has always been one of our priorities to keep this cost low to members and let the commercial business kind of cover the bulk of the costs here as they are going directly to the landfill and not really sorting. The next slide is our electricity generation. This one is self-sufficient, so members don't pay for this, but I always like to talk about it because it's really exciting. So the budget for this is jumping a bit in 2026 to 977,000. This is where we take the methane gas from the landfill, send it to a generator, sell that electricity to NB Power, and then they pay us for that. So in 2026, it will be the final year for debentures on that generator, and the generator does not need to be replaced. It will just need upgrades every 5 to 7 years. So this is kind of a win-win where we will no longer have that cost. So any money that, any revenues that we generate are ours to deal with as we wish. And in the legislation, it allows us to send those revenues to either the Eco360 service or to the waste collection service. They can't go anywhere else, but they can go to those 2 services. So we're excited to what that might hold for additional projects that we can ensue in those 2 services.
Is that just the methane coming off the cells, or are you actually using a biodigester?
we're not using a biodigester, but we have wells like that are inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, each of the cells.
Because some of that composting you guys are bringing in, I would think that would also,
That's actually very interesting. It is one of the projects that we've been talking about quite a bit. What's the next step for the compost facility? So that's one of the ones that they're very interested in at the board level. So maybe you'll hear me talk about that next year. Who knows? The next service is Plan 360. And you had, the lovely Lori here this evening with Caleb. We're seeing a decrease in the budget for this service. However, an increase to, all of the members. So we're seeing an increase of 6.34% for Salisbury. The rationale for this is a second previous year surplus. Those kind of vary each year, and there are no other revenues within Plan 360 to offset any of the costs or changes that might happen. So members do have to cover that cost. So we are seeing a slight increase here for Plan 360. As you may have heard, if you've ever sat in with Sébastien Joannon, record years. There are so many building permits happening. They can't get everything, like, they can't take care of all the permits and get the municipal plans done as they need to, like as quickly as they need to. So we're budgeting for an additional planner here. We're also budgeting for new space. They should be moving into a new space in early 2026. That they will be sharing with economic development, because those two services do work together quite a bit. So we're excited for that move for them. Currently they're in a very tight, both departments are in tight quarters. For 2026, they're going to continue collaborating. This was started in 2025, collaborating with DF and Moncton on a recruitment strategy for all planning departments, because every planning department in the region is struggling, and Moncton DF have their own. So they've been working together, which we're excited about, and then they'll continue to update the municipal land use plans that are required to be updated since reform. The next service is regional collaborative services. This is where we house the regional trail system as well as the regional plan. Those are big projects that took place in 2025. You might remember me talking about them. So we're seeing an increase in the budget, it's a dramatic, I would say, increase from 4 million to just almost 9 million. However, the cost to members, this is where we were able to really maximize our SSF money as well as fundraising funds. So cost to members are also decreasing dramatically. So Salisbury is seeing a decrease of 56%, down to 9,600 for this service. So the regional plan, we're hoping to finish in 2026, as I put here. That kind of changed as of last week. That's going to be pushed a little bit, but they're hoping to still be finished in 2026. And then the regional trail system, this is a project, I guess, where we're intentionally trying not to charge members for construction of the trail. We're charging for more maintenance and signage, stuff like that, but not construction of segments, which is why you're seeing such a decrease in your cost this year. We're hoping to use RSSF and fundraising funds for that, as well as hoping to get some money federally for this. So in 2025, we didn't receive as much money externally as we were hoping to do. So the trail segments that we were hoping to complete in 2025 are not completed, but we are pushing forward for 2026. And we're hoping to construct from Moncton to Shediac and finalize that segment. And that does include, as I mentioned before, the Stood Up River Bridge, which we are hoping to do some great fundraising for, as well as naming rights. If you're interested, the town of Salisbury Stood Up River Bridge might be interested. That's what I feel. So we'll be doing that.
We can't buy.
Yeah, that's right.
How fast?
the town of Salisbury Bridge right over there.
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, so, we'll also be, working to promote this trail as a 365 tourism attraction.
Are you gonna capture federal tourism money for some of that stuff?
We're hoping to. They had a meeting, 2 weeks ago, so they're in talks with that. We're hoping that they see it as much as we do as like a really exciting project for this region.
You need Mr. LeBlanc to,
Yeah,
aid in that push.
we're doing I like to call it a traveling roadshow. So it's going really well, but nothing's confirmed yet. The next service is transportation. This is another exciting one. Budget's staying relatively the same, but we're seeing a decrease in the cost to Salisbury and all members in 2026, thanks to RSSF funding. So the transportation service, since it was added to the Service Commission in 2023, the board had said we want to take this slow and make sure that we're making the right decision for the region. So we have been working on studies, feasibility study, as well as a governance study on how this could potentially work in the Southeast region. So those two studies are finalized, they should be finalized by the end of this year, we're hoping. And then next year, it's being budgeted still for the purchase of the infrastructure in 2026, should the board decide to make a decision for that. We do not need to, so we have a grant of about 1.1 million. We don't need to really use it until March 31st, 2028. So we have time, the board has time to make sure that they believe they're moving forward with the right system for this region. So it just continues to carry over in the budget so that it's there should they decide to make that decision. And this is another one where the infrastructure is being paid for through RSSF as well as that federal grant that we received for transportation. So the municipalities would not be paying for the infrastructure initially, and any costs would be in a separate service that is not mandated. You would have the option to opt in or opt out. And then in 2026, we'll work on a regional transportation master plan for the region. The next service is community and social development. Again, not seeing a lot of movement in the budget, but a decrease in cost of members because of that flexibility with RSSF. This service has been providing a lot of community capacity building sessions for not-for-profit groups as well as municipalities throughout the region. They'll continue with those in 2026, along with some online toolkits that not-for-profits will be able to access, which will be for things like taking care of their finances or recruitment, volunteer recruitment and retention, things like that, that maybe they might not have the capacity internally to know all of the ins and outs of certain things, but now they'll be able to go onto this website and use a toolkit. So they're very excited about that. And then you can keep your eyes open for a community sector conference that they'll be having in the spring of 2026. That will be open to municipalities and not-for-profit groups as a way for learning and networking within the region. And will be, I think, one of the first of its kind because it will have a Francophone component as well, which will be really exciting. They'll have half a day of Francophone sessions and then come together as a whole. And then their standing committee will be meeting to come up with some various other projects that they're all excited about. Next, we have the infrastructure cost sharing service, which we kind of already discussed at length, so I won't go into it too much here. All I will say is that we don't have any regional infrastructure projects at this time. We treated this the same as transportation, where we did a lot of studies initially in 2023 to make sure that we have a framework in place for when a municipality does want to bring a regional project forward. So those studies are finalizing, I would say now, we're going through some scenarios now. So with that being said, the cost for this service will decrease. As you can see, the budget's decreasing by almost 22%. That is because the heavy lifting has been done. Now it kind of sits and waits for that initial project to come along. So we're seeing decreases in terms of the budget as well as the cost of members. Next, we have economic development, which is seeing a bit of an increase in the budget, but since 2023, we have kept the cost of members at zero for this service because we do have a lot of outside funding for economic development, including the 1.5 million from Working New Brunswick, including RSSF money that we're able to use. So we're proud to say that we've been able to keep cost of members for this service at zero. They will be adding the local immigration partnership, which was originally held at the city of Moncton. That's being transferred from the city of Moncton into the RSC in 2026. And what that looks like is we're adding 2 additional staff to focus on local immigration. That, however, is being funded 100% by the IRCC, which is the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So it's coming in, but not costing anyone anything. And then we are working on a regional economic development strategy. And as I mentioned, I'll be moving into some new space in 2026.
What, is there anything pertaining to that strategy for Salisbury?
It will be a strategy for the whole region, but I can't really talk on it because I don't know. To be honest, they just started, so I don't really know which direction it's taking. They just started working on it, and outcomes will come in 2026, 2027. But Francesco would be happy to come talk about it, or he'll be talking about it on Saturday at the meeting as well.
Okay.
Next, we have tourism. We're seeing a decrease here in the proposed budget, but an increase in the cost of members. And again, this is due to a second previous year surplus, that's being brought into 2026. So it's more internal than anything. They have been working really hard, as I mentioned, on the tourism calendar. That's one of their more exciting, not more exciting, I shouldn't say that. Don't tell Mark Landry that I said that, but that's one of their exciting, projects. And they'll continue to compile data and statistics for tourism in the region, and they support all of the tourism associations throughout the whole region. So they'll continue doing great work there. And they have, yes, they're going to implement their opportunity development analysis and strategy. So that's another strategy that was started in 2023 that's finalizing in the final steps right now in 2025. The next is public safety. So public safety is one where the budget's staying the same. Cost of members for Salisbury is decreasing. This is simply just the way that Salisbury is shaking out now in our lineup of tax bases and population, which is how we determine the cost for each municipality. So there were some shakeups there. Initiatives here include the emergency preparedness kits. Those were just brought here to Salisbury just last week, I believe. So that was one of their 2025 initiatives that is finishing up. And then in 2026, the Public Safety Committee will continue to meet. They have a lot of exciting initiatives that they would like to entertain. So that budget will be fully available to them with whatever one they decide to go on. Those are the mandated services. If we move to the next service, now we're getting into ones I will briefly talk about because Salisbury doesn't participate in this. Mosquito control program. This is for Moncton, Dia, Riverview, and Fundy Albert. They've completed their first full season using the drone, which is exciting. We've seen that they're using less larvicide, which is the product they spread to control the mosquito population. So they're really loving the drone system. They'll be purchasing a second drone in 2026. And then we've added an additional team lead and an additional student to help them in the summer months. And finally, the last non-mandated service is regional waste collection services. Salisbury does participate in this. The budget is increasing as well as the cost of Salisbury. However, this is another one where it's based on the number of units in your municipality that are being collected and brought to the site. So as your units increase, you will also see an increase in the cost. This service it's in its first year. It's going really, really well. We kind of anticipated a lot of calls to the office, and we're really not getting that many. The trucks have been set up with cameras now, GPS cameras, so that if somebody calls to complain that their waste wasn't picked up, they can go and punch in that address and see if the waste was if the garbage cans were set out at the time that they should have been. And if they're not, it shuts people down pretty quickly. So that was I think it's working out really, really well. If there's any issues that you guys have, you're free to talk to Sebastian Haltberg about that. This is one of his services and he's really happy with how it's going. So the next slide shows the budget total. So if you'll remember, prior to 2023, we had just a little budget that was around 25 million. And we're just up to just under 50 million now for the full complement of services. That includes mandated and non-mandated services. So it's a bit of a jump in the budget. However, cost of members overall for mandated, actually cost of Salisbury overall, mandated services is just a minimal increase of 0.88% and then a total increase of 2.57%. And the next slide, we're talking about potential shared services. I mentioned those really quickly. These are services that were brought to the commission as potential services that municipalities would like to see done on a regional basis where you could opt in or opt out. The first is asset management database support services. Rolls right off the top. That one is for help with your asset management plans. This is all done on GIS where we can track all of your underground infrastructure and we can kind of pinpoint where it is. It would save you a lot of time. They'll keep this updated for you. There are some of the bigger municipalities that are doing this now. And so it was thought that potentially this might be something that all municipalities would be interested in. So we have an estimated budget of 168,000 for 2026, which would include a full-time GIS technician and then 50% of a senior engineer. Again, these are, just estimated budgets, year one budgets is what we're calling them, and then we would see how things shake out throughout the year. So asset management database support services, one. The next one that was asked, was bylaw enforcement management services. This isn't one that Salisbury would be in need of because, you have your own bylaw enforcement officer. But a lot of municipalities are either using maritime enforcement or are having anybody enforce their bylaws currently. So it's a definite need within the municipalities, specifically the smaller ones. So this is a budget that was guesstimated, I would say. We've since then had some, sit down with maritime enforcement. And so we have some discussing to do, but we will be keeping the municipalities interested in that, updated with any changes that come before the budget's adopted in October. The next service is engineering support services. Some of the smaller municipalities aren't able to afford having an engineer on staff, so they are going to their consultants, even if it's just for small questions. So it was asked that we put a budget together just to have a senior engineer that they could reach out to, not necessarily to draw up plans or do reports, but to be there as kind of a second eye, fresh eyes to look at reports that come from your consultants. So we just budgeted 25% of a senior engineer. You'll see that the same senior engineer is kind of helping with all of these new shared services. And the last one that was requested was water and sewer system operator services. Again, it's hard to find water and sewer system operators, so it was thought that if we were able to have one on our staff, they would be able to work for the municipalities that require it, and maybe not necessarily as their sole operator, but as a backup to cover PTO, or also to potentially be the level 2 operator that could train the level 1s that are currently on their staff. So again, that senior engineer is worked into this budget, as well as one level 2 operator. So these services, if we go to the next slide, it just shows that it's just under $500,000 for the budget of these 4 proposed services, and the cost of members being exactly the same. These were brought forward to the municipalities. The ones who are interested, we now have a list. I believe for Salisbury, we're maybe potentially looking at engineering services only in this list. Some municipalities are more interested in the bylaw enforcement and the water and sewer system. So we've met with each municipality individually as well as a group. And so we're just kind of still working through these numbers. So they may disappear from the proposal that comes for adoption in October, or the numbers may change. But it was important for us to have like a starting point to start the conversations with municipalities in this proposal. On the next slide, I'm just quickly run through our capital budget. It's pretty small for 2026, simply because Eco 360, which is where we have the most of our projects, is still kind of unsure what's happening with the changes with circular materials in 2027. So we kept our projects pretty small. For vehicle and equipment replacement programs, Eco 360 and mosquito control have some replacements taking place there. The biggest projects that'll be happening in Eco 360 would be the public drop-off expansion. If you've been into the site lately, you may have noticed that the public drop-off area is hopping all the time. And when it was first designed, it was designed as a bigger drop-off section, but we kept it smaller just to see how it was going to work. So we don't need to spend any money on the design of the expansion. We can just use an old design and expand that, because it has become a really important spot within the site to ensure that the residential vehicles are not heading up to the landfill and potentially being injured by the bigger vehicles. So that is, it's a really great spot for us. So total capital budget, close to 2.7 million. Next slide shows the financing of that. So we are going for we're budgeting a new debenture. I don't typically ever need to go for that much, but I do budget for it. We use money from reserve funds and operating funds to cover the balance. And typically what happens is projects get shifted around, and maybe we'll have some additional revenues, and we'll put all of that towards financing the capital budget, but we don't really know it until we're in the year. So we budget for new borrowing, but we don't typically go for the whole thing. Lastly, we have looking ahead. So as I mentioned, I didn't mention this, but we have an all municipal staff session that's happening this Thursday. And that's taking place at the Centennial Lodge.
Mapleton Lodge.
Nope, it's the
It's Centennial Lodge. Oh, I thought it was.
But I think everyone's confused, so I think I need to send another email.
Okay.
But it's the Centennial Lodge. We're having a municipal staff session on Thursday. And then, we're having an all council session at the Avenir Center up in the lounge, on Saturday. We hope you'll all attend. This is a great opportunity for you to meet the directors of each service. Each director will give a kind of synopsis of what's been happening under their service. And then we have a really exciting special guest who's coming in. His name is Harvey Stoller, I believe is how you say his last name. He's been working as a consultant on the trail project for us, and he is a very captivating speaker. So I think you'll really enjoy his presentation on the future of the regional trail network. And then the adoption of the 2026 budget will happen in October at our October board meeting at the end of the month. As I mentioned, it might look a little bit different in terms of those potential shared services, but at this point, we are in a 45-day period where municipalities are able to send in any questions or concerns they may have. And to date, we have not received any in terms of our mandated and non-mandated existing services. So with that, that is our 2026 budget proposal. Well, thank you again for inviting me. I love coming to talk about numbers. If there's any questions, I can take them now. Or you will hear mostly the same thing on Saturday. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne. I'll make a note that Councillor Farr is now stepping back into her seat. Anybody need recess or?
No, good.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 4.4. I'll ask, Mr. Doucette to come to the podium to speak on Peter Street parking.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again for allowing me to speak this evening in regards to Peter Street parking. Looking for direction from council to see if it's possible to add additional no parking signs along the north side of Peter Street. Now, to give you a little bit of a background, based on conversations with residents through block parties and just out in the community, they had some concerns during events at the Lions Club where they are parking on both sides, how narrow it is for vehicles to either pass each other, or their main concern was if emergency vehicles needed to access Peter Street for service. So I took it upon myself, actually on community days when I was working that Saturday. I believe there was something going on at the Lions Club that day, and it did show, validity in what the people were saying, that there is, we should look at this. So I reached out to Trevor Doothright and asked the question to see historically if there was previous no parking signs on one side of the streets, and he thinks there was at one time, but over the years of snow plowing and breaking of posts, they just didn't get put back up, and he couldn't confirm when that actually happened. So we have kind of three options that we can kind of look at, looking at either continue having no parking up into the Lions Club area, or continue it all the way up. I do believe it's way away, I think, that continues on there. Or just, kind of leave it as it is. To kind of bring into perspective of a risk side of it, like I said, I took in consideration of what we did for event parking, when we had town events on Gordon and Highland and Chad. There was some issues there with people parking on both sides, and once we made the decision to put no parking on one side of the street, the traffic flow was very, very good. There was no issues, no complaints whatsoever from the residents or people visiting Highland Park during the events. So I see that as a positive, and I think moving forward, I think if we did the same on Peter Street, I don't think you would see any objection to it, just based it on a safety perspective. So, you know, for a financial side of it, it wouldn't cost really much. It just, you know, we'd have to kind of go by how many signs we need and it's probably budgeted for that as well. But as far as the process of how we move forward with this, I'll let Austin take over on how we can move forward if possible.
I think the only piece process wise is just that I think our suggestion or recommendation is to do a schedule, so to avoid, because right now in the current form, we would have to do 3 readings for the bylaw, but I think based on our kind of quick conversations, it's much easier logistically to introduce a schedule so that these come up down the road. It's an amendment to a schedule, which is 1 reading, 1 motion, as opposed to going through the full 3 readings. That's part of the reason we're bringing it to the whole first. We don't wanna finalize that draft before getting that direction. So that's what we would do, is we would introduce a revised bylaw for 3 readings that would then pull out the existing sections, i.e. Douglas Street has no parking provisions. It would add this into a new schedule, and then if we get requests like this, we'd be able to add them based on that 1 resolution. And the only other piece that I'll mention is that we also formally got the request from the Lions Club themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the other piece that we did get. So that's the process, and then our recommendation at this point is that we see validity in that request and would recommend going the amendment route. But there's a recommendation on the floor and then questions.
Need a motion to,
I'll move that council give direction to amend bylaw number 15, a bylaw of the municipality of Salisbury regarding traffic by adding a schedule to include streets that prohibit parking, including adding the north side of Peter Street to the schedule. So moved.
second by Councillor Thorne, second by Councillor Glant. Questions for motion?
So we're the side that the Lions Club is on, is that what we're talking about?
Correct. Yeah.
The north side.
Would
is
that be the
confused,
east side?
yeah.
Wouldn't it, what?
East?
Depending upon.
Or you're not?
This is the north side of the street, isn't
Yeah.
Don't get caught.
If the side, if we wouldn't say east side, it would be showing.
Yeah.
on the map anyway.
Gonna be
Show
shown
the
on.
map and say the side of the Lions Club,
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
easy for people.
Yeah, it would show very similar to our event parking, like it's shown green, red.
And we're proposing the whole length of Peter Street?
We're gonna come back with that, because that was one piece that we had discussed and never really got clarity from the Lions Club. That's the area where there used to be no parking, but in the bylaw and the schedule, it'll have a recommendation there when we get there, but happy to take suggestions now.
I would say the whole.
Yeah.
What about Smith Street? If all of a sudden you have half the parking on Peter Street, or you don't have problems on Smith Street?
I think the main piece is that as long as it's not both sides, I think the piece that in the original request from the Lions Club, it was that, for their events in particular, they have a parking lot, like, a lot of people don't use that or don't know it's there.
Well, it's not really well.
Yeah,
It was full on Saturday.
Yeah.
For the breakfast,
Yeah.
it was full, no question, so.
generally, like, that's mind you, I go later at the breakfast, but I go there before even looking on the street, because there's generally, when I go at least, there's generally always parking.
I left at 9 o'clock to go to the Memorial Cook meetings, and it was completely full.
I think going back to Brad's piece on when we've had event parking provisions, so we haven't seen an influx of reducing parking provisions from those streets go elsewhere, and those are chaotic.
So the Lions, when there are major events like the Comedy Fest, or not typically the breakfast per se, they put pylons along the street to prevent, to allow emergency vehicle access. A lot of this is obviously events that they can't control, the Lions are not, because they rent the building out as well, so.
Yeah, and unlike the event parking provisions, it would be a permanent piece, like school hours on Douglas.
Like, I mean, it happens every Saturday, or once out of the month at least, right? So,
I love it.
good. And I like the schedule too.
Yeah, me too.
Keep it
It's
flexible.
so much worse.
That was honestly an oversight on our part.
How would you?
Just procedurally, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Okay, with that, thank you very much.
But we need to vote.
All in. Any additional questions? No additional questions? All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, you have your direction. With that, I think we'll stay at the podium. We'll move on to item 4.5 proposal for neighborhood watch program.
So, as you know, this has been one of the pet projects I wanted to do, for the town, based on obviously the increased size of what's going on here, within the town. The latest report, I did get Q2 report from the Caledonia RCMP, but from the numbers today, they reported 430 occurrences happened just in Salisbury itself, which broke down my numbers here. So there was, out of that, was 63 property crimes, 25 crimes against persons, 17 traffic offenses, and 15 other criminal code. And then there were other things that I can't really get into based on, there's so many different categories that they just kind of lumped them into one. So some of those were like mischief, theft under 5,000, and violations involving threat to an individual or whatnot, right? So, so I decided to do a little bit more investigating, to put together some alternatives for a community watch program. So I reached out to 3 community watch agencies.
What slide should Diane be on that? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about the
4, I think, slide 4.
slide.
Or slide 3, you can start, yeah, there you go, sorry.
So you can move on to the next one. So I reached out to 3 different community watch programs: Neighborhood Watch, Citizens on Patrol, and Crime Stoppers. Okay, Diane. So Neighborhood Watch is a program, basically neighbors watching neighbors. It's a community during a time where burglaries are most likely to occur. And basically, a police officer wouldn't know if it was somebody who lived in the neighborhood or not, but people who live in that neighborhood or on that street would know. So that's what the whole basis of the program is about. So. So basically what Neighborhood Watch, it consists of a steering committee, which is approximately 4 to 6 members. It is a self-funded program, so they do have community sponsors, grants, local businesses that donate to the program. They involve heavily on social media, brochures, community signs. They do have create their own bylaws as part of the program. More of an internal of how the program should be run. And then they do have quarterly meetings. They do have a program, a sheet that they exchange contact information on everybody on their street. So they know who lives there, where they work, hours they work. So they kind of have an idea of what goes on. And as well, if anything they see is suspicious, they do call the RCMP to investigate. And then the biggest thing that they feel about this program is that there's a sense of security within their community because their neighbors are actually watching their back. I think the neighbors do have the best interests for their street and community. Diana?
Is there, sorry, I have a question. Is there RCMP oversight over that program?
RCMP are oversights on all 3 programs. So they do have, they are involved at different capacities for each program. And you'll see here as I move on with the next one here. So the next agency was Citizens on Patrol. So basically what is Citizens on Patrol is It's a group of individuals, who actually go and patrol, whether it's walking, whether they take their own vehicles, whether they are on their bicycles. And they drive around the community and they look for suspicious activity. They are well, marked. They do have, a jacket, and not really a uniform, but they do have a vest or a jacket that says, citizens on patrol. And basically, they're more involved in looking out the bigger portions of the community, not just what's going on in their street. And it gives them kind of an opportunity to get more involved with the people outside their normal 2 streets over type of thing, right? So can change there. So they partner again, they'll partner with the RCMP. The this particular Citizens on Patrol, they have a public safety advisory committee from the city of Moncton. And this is a national program, which is, I do believe I think it's 38 Citizens on Patrol communities across Canada. It started in Alberta, that's where it began, and it just kind of expanded across the country as it got bigger and more popular. So their biggest thing that they want to bring to the importance of Citizens on Patrol is the deterrence by observing and documenting and reporting to provide a presence in the community. Again, either by vehicle or on foot, bicycle, or other means as required. They're very big on education. So basically they talk to community members and neighbors and businesses to show the importance of what they're doing and why they're doing it. Bringing awareness to suspicious and dangerous and unusual activities. So kind of getting other people involved to say, hey, don't be afraid if you do see something, call 911 or call the RCMP. Because we all been told on many occasions that the RCMP, they won't know unless you call them and inform them, and then they'll kind of increase the patrols. Safety, to ensure members are always trained of using safe practices. And basically, having fun, get out, have coffee, have the odd chin wag with the odd person to see how they're doing and kind of move away from always looking at the seriousness of this, right? So, Diane. And the third and final one is MB Crime Stoppers. So basically, Crime Stoppers is a charitable organization which is focused on assisting law enforcement in solving crimes in the neighborhood and providing information from anonymous tipsters. Crime Stoppers is managed by a civilian board of directors. He has established policy, raised funds to operate the program and authorize award payments to tipsters. We have Jim Gillies, who is the manager up here at the Big Stop. He's I do believe he's the vice president for local chapter of Crime Stoppers, and I do believe he's the VP of the provincial Crime Stoppers as well. And Crime Stoppers is not a police or government program, but Crime Stoppers is an extension of community responding to crime. So the benefit that I see that I like about this one is that there's always people so nervous about getting involved. They don't want to attach their name to anything. They do want to help, but they don't want to be attached because, they're so worried that someone's going to find out who it was, and they're just worried about someone's going to get back to them for doing the right thing. Right? That's the challenge part. So their mission is to develop Crime Stoppers as an effective crime-solving organization throughout, with the primary objective of helping to stop, solve, and prevent crime together. What they decided to also, and this is relatively new, is they created an app, which is called the P3 app. And you can download it on your phone. You can get it either on the Android or the Apple Store. And basically what it is, it's in the right at your hands, and you follow what it asks you, what type of crime is being committed, and as soon as it's done, it goes right in and a file is created and RCMP is contacted. And you don't have to, and you're given a number or an ID, I guess it's not really a number, but an ID. That if the crime that you gave the RCMP or did turn into a charge and then a tip, obviously you get your tip money, then they can go through that way of doing it as well, so. Diane? So Crime Stoppers works with the RCMP, Department of Public Safety, as well as the MBSPCA. It's just not, crimes, it is through with ANDA. That's the other thing I like though, too, is animal cruelty is part of this. And the education part of it is that I didn't really see, Citizens on Patrol, or, Crime Stopper, the, Neighborhood Watch, look at that as part of what they would look at. But these, Crime Stoppers was benefit to that. So I noticed in the last little bit here, MBSPC has been getting a lot of calls lately for animal, whether it's off leash or abuse. I know there has been a couple here in the town in the last 18 months or so, Diane? So I'm recommending, seeking recommendation that council direct administration to move forward with using the Crime Stoppers P3 app with as the community watch program, just for the simplicity of it, as well as, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, ability of it, that it helps people do the right thing, but be anonymous, that that seems to be the biggest thing that I've noticed as well, even from an enforcement side, people calling in to file a complaint. They're so worried about giving me because they don't want to be, it's just, this is the way it seems to be going now, especially with Salisbury being an aging community, and they do want to help, but they don't want to I think there's a block there for them to do that a little bit further, so.
Yeah, move by council direct administration to move forward with using Crime Stoppers P3 app as the community watch program.
Second.
And it's very easy to download, I just
Moved
downloaded.
by Councilor Bannister, seconded by Deputy Mayor Blinas. Questions?
One piece too that I'll just add, sorry, before questions, is that the Crime Stoppers are coming at, I forget which meeting, so they, Crime Stoppers, the provincial association, right, requested a grant through the town's grant, program, which was a one-time piece, which was approved earlier this summer, I forget exactly when. And then the mayor made the request to have them present specifically with respect to the P3 app, and then these conversations were also ongoing, so, the person who's coming is the Crime Stoppers coordinator with J Division, so I forget exactly what meeting.
It's because they bumped to the.
Yeah, we can just switch, yeah, I forget, but at one point this fall, so they will come, and they're sharing more of, just general information on provincially, but will obviously be related to this, topic.
I guess my question, and I'm very familiar with the P3 app, I've chatted with Jim and different people. And we'll learn more about when they come, but, the combination of, why can't you have both? I guess my question is, why can't you have the Crime Stoppers app for citizens to leverage anonymity and be able to do that? Why couldn't you have a neighborhood watch on top of that? I'm saying, even if it's not decided on right now, I would want the council to paint ourselves into a corner that we have to do everything we can to curb crime. And why can't we look at multiple avenues around it? So just throwing that out, I'm not an expert on it by any means.
I have a couple questions.
There are components, I think, too, that are kind of neighborhood watch-ish, we'll call it, like because it's not just the app, so they do a lot of prevention things.
Yeah, they
as
do,
well.
yeah, so they're, like, they'll they'll actually put all the signs up in the community that this community is protected through Neighborhood Watch. So, there is some deterrent as well. I get your question, and I think for me, I just didn't want to muddy the waters of doing one or two. Because there is a little bit more time involved to.
Yeah, no, I'm good with
Outside.
starting with something.
Yeah, and then we can work on from there and kind of build it, use this as a base. And then, and work from there, and if it is working, then we can pivot into adding something down the road. But as a starting point, as far as, trying to get the ball rolling, I guess.
Yeah, I'm perfectly good progress over perfection, because I think we have a member in the gallery that I think we started talking this back in 2021.
Yeah.
Something like that, so glad to finally get something moving.
One piece on that too that I was gonna add is just resource wise. So the RCMP have, the coordinators at the J division level for, Crime Stoppers specifically. Any form of neighborhood watch otherwise has to go through the local detachment. So we have one community policing officer. As a reminder, we've got a file that's been with them because there's again, only one that's been a year. So
I'm familiar.
yeah, it takes some time. It takes some time.
That's why I'm very good with getting them going, but I don't think we can give up just because. Additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Crime Stoppers is available to everybody already today, right? Like,
Correct.
Like, what are we, like, we're telling you to proceed with Crime Stoppers? What do we have to do? Like, what are we doing?
I think it's more promoting it throughout the community. I have all kinds of pamphlets and different things that I promote it during block parties. I have a kind of a little stand that I have as far as
Mhm.
all the things that I look at from my 7 beaks in my hat, as I always say. And just to, I think, just to have the backing from council to move forward with it and to promote it. And to maybe get together and have an open house somewhere that we can have people come in and chat and talk and explain what the program is and how easy it is to not only, you don't have to do everything off the P3 app, but you can still make the phone call and follow through that. I think it's just more of taking the.
Awareness.
And what, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, I support the Crime Stoppers program, but it's an after the fact, right? Like, when I think of Citizens on Patrol or Neighborhood Watch, it's a little bit more on the preventative side. It's a presence. And active, proactive, somebody sees something, they're calling the police officer right away, rather than submitting a request through Crime Stoppers or a phone message that you're gonna get an answer the next day. I also wondered, with the presence of the Government of Canada building in the town, do we expect did that have any factor in choosing which program would be the recommendation?
No, because I think when we started this, I don't think the building was even put to tender yet. Because I've been kind of been working on this for a little bit over a year. Setting up meetings with different organizations to sit down and talk. And the first thing they tell me especially with the Citizens on Patrol, is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to organize it. It's the training. The RCMP, they have certain things that they have to follow to make sure that they do not get themselves in trouble. A lot of people get emotionally tied to, oh, I'm just gonna follow this person. I'm just, see where they're going, and all of a sudden they're gonna get themselves in trouble. And once they realize that they're being followed, or then they could get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Right, so.
And the town would have to sign an agreement with the RCMP to basically be liable for that. So that's the other concern. And I think the piece on, the Government of Canada building, as it is known, is a presence will, just from a deterrent, will be helpful.
It's another piece to the puzzle. I do know that Councillor Bannister and I are, this has been a couple of years ago as
Yes.
well, but we were on some meetings with some mayors from other communities that have adopted and leveraged, Crime Stoppers. And they said they're great success, so I think we have to start somewhere. by all means, but I would caution that we have to really promote this hard, because I mean, the RCMP has an app as well, that quite frankly, the uptake on it is not huge,
And the online crime
but
report.
even reporting crime is not. So are they gonna be more apt to report things that they think are gonna happen when they're not even reporting what is happening? I guess that's gonna be one of the, it is very used, I've used it at demonstrations with Crime Stoppers as well as the RCMP, so, the RCMP do monitor as well. So.
Yeah, and I did have, like I said, I did have a great conversation with, Counselor Castillo. Sister. She's actually one of the head persons that started that in Riverview. And she said it's been still a tough go to get people to sign up and to actually do something and, have a steering committee and get people committed to do that and work on the bylaws and, for simplicity, I just think as a starting point, I think this is a great opportunity to at least put something in the town that gives some people to look at saying, hey, the town's actually doing something. We've got signage and, again, they're creating new things every year. Cause every time I run in the gym, Gilly, he's like, yeah, did you hear about this and you hear about that? And he's got all kinds of swag to give out and tell people how to call or sign up and whatnot. So, that's just basically the easiest way that I feel that, it's a good starting point.
So do we know what we're promoting and how we're promoting and what it's gonna cost?
We need those directions first, but, like Crime Stoppers, like I was mentioning, they had a grant through our grant policy this year, so under the 250 limit, but, chances are we'd be able to work with them to make sure that those go towards the promotions of, here, yeah.
So, any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Reminded that will carry. We want a 5-minute break for the next session. It's going to be quite long.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
I just have fun.
Yeah, please.
So, we have a move from Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Extra. All in favor?
Yeah.
I'm reminded we're in. Okay, do I have a motion to enter back into the council session? Ben? Thorne, questions to the motion? Seeing none, we're back into the session. With that, we'll move on to item 4.6, Town of Salisbury 2026 budget update.
So we have a presentation for this one. This was added to eScribe this afternoon. So similar to last year, we wanted to bring, I would say probably more important than last year actually, but we wanted to bring this to council at committee of the whole this month as we start to receive information and numbers and craft our budget for 2026. So we're still at a point where we're receiving information, i.e. Service Commission. We have a few kind of key tenders out to market right now. Finalizing applications for funding for capital plan and those things are coming in. So we're at a point now where we're starting to put numbers to paper and it's a good time to get that direction. So the intent of this presentation is to give an overview of that. So next slide. As a reminder, just in terms of refreshers, I guess, both on requirements we must follow, but also where we're at today. So municipalities must have balanced budgets. Our operating budget revenue is mostly collected through the warrant. We'll hear, including in the next or the second next agenda item, on how there's some long-term sustainability challenges with that at the municipal level. But that warrant determines property tax rates. And then there's the utility budget that must be self-sufficient and it's paid through user fees. So if you're connected or have access to connect, I should say, to sewer, you pay an annual fee for that. That cannot be sustained by the operating budget and vice versa. In 2024, the town approved a 5-year capital plan and provided direction on a 5-year budget outlook. So that was, I want to say, at the end of October and going into November last year. And we approved our budget in December of last year. It's because of the provincial assessment timeline. Council must approve the budget no later than November 15th, and in 2025, we held the tax rate amongst the town's 5 subunits. So that's 1 subunit for the former village and 4 for the former LSDs. For the next slide, just looking at our budget at a glance, our operating budget this year is about 7.8 million. Our debt servicing ratio is last year, that number is essentially determined at the audit process. Is 4%, which is expected to be lower this year and next based on debentures that are expiring. Our estimate is to be about 7.4. With fire hall debenture, the provincial limit is 20 and the auditor recommendations are around 10. I think that depends on what auditor you ask and the circumstances of the municipality, but that's generally the number. Last year, one piece that's important to note is that we had about 731,000 in what we call operating capital. So a contribution from our operating budget that feeds our capital budget. And there's one kind of large ticket item that is important when it comes to keeping that number in mind as we talk about 2026. So the next slide talks about some of the factors that we're seeing for next year. So the large one obviously is the property assessment freeze. So going back to that five-year budget outlook, a number of calculated assumptions were made. So essentially based on numbers for new construction estimates historically and based on properties that were in spike protection mechanism, we anticipated about an 8% increase in our operating budget for 2026. And that will not occur because of the property assessment freeze. So what that means is about $428,000 less in revenue than we anticipated based on what we anticipated of that 8% versus what we're anticipating now going into 2026 with this provincial policy decision. This is what I was mentioning is that big ticket item that will have a factor on our operating capital contribution. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that it gets eaten up very, very quickly. So in our 5-year plan last year, we had a project targeted for 2027 under the PMHP program, so the Provincial Municipal Highways Program, which was the extension of sidewalk on River Road and the installation of storm sewer. That was on the docket for 2027 and in our plan accordingly. The province has made an exception to approve that project for 2026 in anticipation of the P380 bridge commencing in 2027. So they wanted that work to be done ahead of time so that we can collaborate on basically end and start points of contract. So that requires a significant shift in our capital plan just in general based on the total project costs. If anyone remembers the cost of sidewalk on McDonald Road this year, it's not cheap. And so that eats up a lot of that funding. Sidewalk is not eligible under the PMHP program. So it's just the underground, essentially drainage infrastructure that is. So given the fact that that's eating a lot of the contribution and the compounding effects of the property assessment freeze, we are seeing a lot of cut or deferral in our anticipated capital spending. Another factor is that the town submitted a request to merge former LSD subunits. So as I mentioned, we have 5 subunits. We made the request at the direction of council. Technically, it was set last year during budget deliberations, and then submitted when they were accepting applications for it this year. But to merge them, we would essentially have, if approved, former village and then so inside outside rate. Most municipalities are year over year increasing their rates by 5 cents to meet their to merge their taxation subunits because there's such a fundamental difference. That is not the case in Salisbury. All of them are within about 1/4 cent. So it's very, very close. So we are lucky on that front. And it was an ideal time to merge them, and it's a lot easier for us to communicate some of these budget conversations when we have 2 rates.
Can I ask a question before we get past
Yes.
this slide? The capital project on River Road.
Yeah.
Can we look at ways to reduce that? Like maybe we pave it instead of concrete sidewalk or?
Yeah, that's conversations that we're gonna have to probably have. Apparently this year was a bit of an anomaly for concrete is also what we're hearing, like, so that's an option, but it is, we may very well have to get there. Like we're budgeting based on the OPC that we have, that includes anticipated market rates, but, we'll go to some of the challenges on what we might have to do to adjust, yeah. But yes, good point. Other places often don't use concrete at all, so it's definitely an option. It's the final year.
Crushed stone.
Sorry?
So you crush stone even for a couple of years, I mean, you know where.
In the end, it's gonna be more yeah. Asphalt, I would say, is an option that would be not necessarily a feasible one, but, if we're really strapped for cash, maybe. The next budget year is the final year of the town's 3-year strategic plan, so, that dictates what we prioritize, and things that we defer, are based on what is or is not. We start by saying what is or is not in that plan. Another big factor is fiscal reform. So, as council knows, there's 2 streams. One of them is equalization and one of them is, capital renewal funding. On equalization, to spare us from going through historical policy decisions, essentially, council or the town receives right now 75,000 through the old formula that's allocated based on the, every year they've been reducing it by 20% based on what the village used to get, when they started, phasing that out. So, next year we are receiving an equalization amount. How that number is calculated, I'm not sure, because our estimates of the algebra, in the, regulations gave us a 0. So, not sure if that's working, but, nonetheless, it's a net gain of about $5,000 of what the former village, used to get, which is right now we've been reduced, so it's about 40% less than what the former village used to get, but in terms of 2025 to 2026, it's a net gain of 5,000. And there's a capital renewal funding contribution, of about 160,000. So these are subject to the final assessments being released in October, and are not final by any means. In our capital plan, we're actually recommending stacking that 160,000 and using it in 2027, using both years' contributions towards a project that we've not been able to secure funding for. It cannot be used, if I use River Road as an example, on a project like that because it's not renewal. It's an infrastructure upgrade, so it would have to be on improving existing infrastructure. So whether that's existing buildings, existing streets, existing vehicles, that type of work. So go to the next slide. Some of the pieces that we're bringing forward, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in the assumption section, but we're assuming a 2% growth rate in assessment. So as mentioned, that's in contrast to the 8%. The increase in assessments are a little bit challenging to predict based on how the province has structured the policy, in that the sale of new properties, so if a property is sold, they are not subject to the assessment fees. If there's new construction, which is more predictable, we have those numbers. And also the non-residential also gives us a little bit of an indicator. So 2%, I would say in most years is an ambitious target, but we're comfortable assuming that for right now based on those factors that I mentioned. Another big difference year over year is that in 2025, the town is carrying a surplus of a difference in the surplus is 140,000. And the rationale for that is when we closed out our books from 2023, in January and February, we got a whole bunch of funding from the province for projects that we undertook the year prior, and also municipal reform transition funding. So it inflated that surplus, which is carried as revenue in this year's budget. Which is significantly more than what I would say a usual surplus would be that we're carrying over from 2024 into the 2026 budget. And the fire hall debenture is there, and as council knows, we had budgeted amounts for short-term financing and the cost of issuing debentures, so there's no net cuts or impact there, but it is a factor because now it won't be short-term financing, it'll be carried over flipped into the debenture, I should say. If you go into where we're at now, so in terms of process, all staff were given the direction that we will have some challenging decisions to make. And if any budget requests were submitted to Diane and I that did not have cost savings somewhere in their budget, then they were asked to resubmit. So that was the general direction. We've shaved off at this point about 200,000 in savings to date. Our capital budget is what we're calling balanced, but several projects have been deferred, to future years. And as of the presentation date, so we're about 25,000 short, in expenses in terms of what we need to cut. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it is when we've cut down on a lot of expenses. So, one of the other pieces or the factors here is that, as standard practice, we budget very conservatively for revenue. That's normal for us here, but also most municipalities, because there's a lot of variables. So if you look at this year as an example, permit revenues are through the roof compared to what we budgeted because of a few key projects. That may very well happen, and there's projects in the hopper that may facilitate that, but it's not a guarantee, and it's not a prudent financial decision for us to budget like that. So that's where we're at right now. In a perfect world, her assessments come a little bit higher and it's simple, but otherwise, we remain committed to, based on the direction we've gotten to date, and unless it changes this evening, we're committed to finding that 25,000 throughout the budget, in various different places. If we go to the next slide, some of the assumptions that have brought us there. So again, as mentioned, we're anticipating that revenue will increase by 2%, specifically with respect to the warrant. Because everything else will be subject to the assessment freeze. We're assuming the RCMP cost will rise 4%. That's 58,000, just in and of itself. Historically, the last few years, that's what it has been. That comes in at 4.5% or at 5%. Then you can imagine that there's more cuts that have to be made elsewhere. This is a reality of having such little variable expenses, in our budget. But it is a significant one, and I'll talk about some of the differences, but essentially our 2026 proposed budget is less than our 2025 budget, so assuming these increases can prove to be a challenge. Several costs are still assumptions based on tender pricing, so we're out to market right now for municipal insurance. As council knows, there's risks there, but we're going out to market right now for a multi-year contract renewal just based on our annual premium amount and the Procurement Act requirements. Snow clearing, janitorial services, those are all out to market right now or have recently closed. Mind you, some have been proven to be better than we anticipated, but those are unfortunately already reflected in the numbers. We're assuming and are proceeding with, as mentioned, council's direction to hold our 2025 rate next year. And essentially our way of doing that is postponing or deferring projects in hopes that the assessment freeze is a temporary measure. So that's an assumption that is, I would say, a hopeful one. The province is looking at a potential complete overhaul of the system, but right now that is what we're assuming. And in essence, what that means is that next year there are hard decisions in terms of deferring projects that may have to happen, but may be able to be quote unquote back on track starting in 2027. If you go to the next slide, the other piece that we're assuming is there's provincial taxation measures with respect to volunteer fire departments. So we're assuming that there's those tax measures in place. And we're in conversations with Service of Brunswick on that right now. We're looking at our existing insurance premiums and anticipating certain increases based both on asset additions, but also based on our loss history and ongoing claims, and we're essentially assigning a number to that. Next slide. So again, if I try to take all of these numbers and kind of generalize what this means, we have limited flexibility for the incoming council to do projects next year in 2026, which is a challenge, not for us today, but will be a challenge for us come May or June, I guess, of next year. But it is something that we have to put out there. Right now, we are not budgeting a transfer to reserve. So that's against the principles of our strategic plan. Mind you, we have not budgeted significantly. This year was about 27,000. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it is not there right now. We are, to Councillor Lignis's point, concerned right now about being able to absorb post-tender cost escalation. So as any municipality knows, not just us, the costs have been through the roof for many projects in the last 2 years. We could do the best predictions that we can. Sometimes projects come under, and generally it's our larger projects that do, and our smaller ones that come in higher. So, luckily, the main large one next year is kind of right in the middle of the pack of that in terms of its 4 to 6 weeks of straight construction. So, companies will hopefully bid competitively, but there is concern there that we'll have limited ability to absorb. In previous years, we've been able to reallocate without jeopardizing projects. We've been able to commit other dollars within the operating budget to kind of offset that, but there's definitely less room for that next year. Our overall financial position remains, and I shouldn't say financial position long term, I mean our 1 year-over-year budgeting process remains volatile to provincial policy decisions. So that's not Salisbury specifically, that's every municipality. Financial position probably wasn't the right thing to say there. We're in a good financial position. It's just that our budgeting is jeopardized. Yeah, it's jeopardized based on political policy decisions ultimately. And in recent years, we put a big focus on maintaining or reducing the former LSD proportional share. So going into the budget last year, that was one of our main priorities of how can we ensure that we're reducing that share. Most municipalities are not doing that. Our share in 2023 was at 95%, and then I think it was 90% in 2024, and last year we reduced it even more by about 15%. Most municipalities did not do that additional decrease. And the reason that we're saying less ability to focus is because right now we're trying to cut costs. We don't know what that percent will be yet, until we have some more numbers to inform that. Next slide. Just current budget highlights in terms of where we're at. So we're at about 7.85 million. Last year, as mentioned, it was 7.88. There's a difference there of about give or take 30,000 in terms of what we have budgeted for this year versus what we anticipate next year. It does maintain a line for what we have in a few different areas that we can lump together and call professional services. There's a few different reasons that we're keeping that right now. One is that council requested a review generally a few years post-reform. We have a new council coming in, and so last year our strategic plan, and that's an essential document and process to undergo with the new council, especially as we wrap up our first one. And then we have a general engineering budget line, which is less than we've spent in previous years, but based on projects, we're comfortable with that for next year. We're maintaining staffing levels and students. We're exploring kind of that summer period in case there are additional financial pressures. And then not necessarily increases, but adjustments to building expenses. So you'll see some numbers shift based on the fact that the fire department is moving out of this building, and that will then be assumed by Public Works. So we're proposing that it be split 40-40-20, which is the same split right now, it's just the department switch. So in past years, the recreation department was next door. We've gradually been phasing them in here in terms of building expenses, but it will it's a kind of just general principle that we're following as we set the budget for next year. If you go to the next slide, we are maintaining remuneration rate between 2.2% and 2.5% in the proposed budget. We talked about our revenue estimates being conservative. We're also looking at some items that may be able to be completed in 2025. So that's based on our projections this year. In particular, the efficiency review that council would like to undertake, because there is a timing could be on our side. So we're looking at that with our projections. And we are right now maintaining the $150,000 in residential development incentive, our program, for a couple of reasons. One is that that's partially already committed, but two, it's in all of the plans that we use to guide our budget or our priorities or actions, with the exception of the recreation master plan. But where it's partially committed, we're trying to keep that. But it is, I'll be upfront, a contender for a decrease, despite the fact that the intent is to increase that starting in next year, but it's definitely not going to be increased. But that's what we're looking at in terms of that program. So if you go to the next slide, this kind of shows just general service area by service area. We're not gonna dive into it too much because this will change, as we get our assessment numbers and as they kind of make things a little bit more definitive. But you can see most of them are seeing decreases with the exception of protective services. The primary factor there is again, the RCMP costs, that make it seem like there are additional spending there. So the main piece with that is that there's additional building expenses, where the fire department will have 100% of building expenses. But you can see that if you look at that number that I shared for RCMP, it's basically a net neutral amount. So there are savings we've identified in that service area, so protective services in general. It does not jeopardize our planned spending for equipment renewal for the fire department, nor does it well, obviously it can jeopardize the operations of the new building. The lights have to stay on, so on and so forth. So that's what we're looking at, but the difference between 2025 and 2026 as it stands today with those assumptions is just shy of 30,000, so 29,940 is the difference. To go to the next slide, as we mentioned, the main highlights of the primary, impacts are on our capital plan. So in our asset management plan, it recommends allocating 300,000 to street resurfacing. We have a report to speak, as council knows, we're working with Total Pave to update our condition assessments. That recommends doubling that budget, and we're proposing reducing it by 100,000, so that's not ideal. We've had the last couple of years a standard allocation in there for land acquisition, which was mostly for surplus land from the province. That has been removed for 2026 in the proposed kind of revisions. We had a sidewalk extension on Main Street as part of our overall kind of trail and connectivity plan. It's also been requested by some stakeholders in the community and was also mentioned as a potential solution during the crosswalk study that was done last fall, early this year, that has been deferred. This is the project that we're proposing. The next bullet, not the sidewalk, that we're proposing holding our capital renewal allocation for next year and doubling it up in 2027. It's the sludge removal at the wastewater treatment plant. While it's not glorious, it's important to do, and because it's not glorious, it's not eligible for very much funding. So it could be a project under bilateral agreements. Those are exhausted until at least 28, 29. And we've gone through a couple of applications and have been unsuccessful. So this is a good contender for that capital renewal funding. And also it helps us with that limited flexibility that we have in the utility budget as well. We had on the docket trail extension projects for next year that are proposed to be deferred. The primary connections there are to the treatment facility, ironically, to that general vicinity. Two pieces that we're trying to maintain right now in trails, which again is subject to change, is a connection to Riverbend and I don't want to say an alternate route, but an extension that will ensure that we have trail connectivity during the P380 bridge closure. So ideally, we get that done next year to ensure that there's no stop in trail access when the province starts their bridge, but as a worst case, again, it means that there will be a period of time in 2027 when that trail portion is closed, where we're constructing an extension to get around the bridge closure. But we're still kind of working on those and looking at what some options are. As council knows, we've talked about a few different additions to our capital plan in recent months. The details are still privy to further conversations and deliberations, including deliberations in closed session. But it includes an addition on a municipal building, infrastructure renewal, and potential land acquisition related to some key projects of other levels of government. And what that will mean is that it will require borrowing, but that is the plan currently in our 5-year capital plan right now, and no concerns there. And in our capital plan, we have funding allocated for the solar panels at the fire hall. So one of the components of the FCM funding is that there are underground conduits at the fire hall. So we're eager to get those installed, but there are a couple of options available to municipalities through different, funding programs and, panel providers that we're exploring. Right now, those are still in, the capital plan because we're using CCDF dollars, but this is an area that we're looking at as, potentially able to absorb, cost overruns if there are any in other projects, if we're able to go through some of the alternative ways of obtaining the solar panels. We're in conversations now with both the providers, other municipalities who have gone that route, and anticipate scheduling them to come and talk to council about what that looks like and what different options are. If you go next slide. Again, talking more on the 2026 capital plan, so we have some CCDF dollars allocated for nature trails at Powers Pit Road, so that's town-owned land in one of the former LSD wards. This is a shared project, and so may be recommended, we may come forward with a recommendation to council to, if needed, to reallocate that towards an extension for the P380 bridge with the existing trail network. The River Road storm sewer and sidewalk extension, again, is on the plan and is there, given the request of the province. Fire hall panels, as I already mentioned, we're maintaining the budget line in the capital plan for Sunrise and Twilight Phase 1. That's dependent on being successful through CHIF and FCM. We're maintaining a street resurfacing allocation, but are reducing it by a third. Maintaining the SCBA renewal budget allocation for next year for the fire department, 62 Douglas, I mentioned in the previous slide. Eagle Ridge and Dundee are under developer agreements, but we are responsible for the capital or the installation of the asphalt. That doesn't affect our contributions, but is still on the plan nonetheless. And then there are some small equipment pieces that are still there, including snow blower and sander, which is for the rink and trails. And in the grand scheme of things are minor, but they've been warned that those are also on the block currently. And then as mentioned, the other boring pieces are land acquisition and new municipal street or infrastructure renewal in anticipation of things in the hopper. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. In terms of our capital plan. So most of the changes are again based on what we're spending in our capital plan. It goes against a number of strategic priorities, including our asset management plan, but is ultimately where we look first because we've increased our capital spending in recent years. And the challenge, assuming that the question will be, well, why don't we get grants for that? We have to spend money to get the grant money, and it makes it challenging in terms of meeting our stacking amounts when we have to contribute so much to that River Road project. So potential changes in terms of what we're proposing right now in our rough draft and kind of what we're looking at kind of prioritizing or looking for general direction on this evening, if there is any, or in the coming weeks as we get some of these numbers and bring more formal numbers back to council, is that if in the event that property tax revenue is higher and capital projects for some reason in a perfect, ideal, wonderful world that I wish we lived in every year, that the projects close under budget for capital projects, we're essentially reallocating or proposing to reallocate that funding back into the capital plan. So in the order there, it would be to add Main Street sidewalk extension, then the trail, then the street resurfacing. Everything else, we don't anticipate having enough to add some of the other pieces that we deferred for next year. So that's kind of our general kind of sense on priority. Sorry.
What fit into that order?
Those three over the others. So a few different things, mostly that for trails, if I use that as an example, that's easier to absorb for, if I go back to this year at our permit revenue, that builds more trails than we would need to with that money alone, right? So those are a little bit easier. The Main Street piece is a safety concern, which is why it gets punched at the top of the list. And is new spending, but is not going to be eligible for grants this year, next year, the year after. So if we're gonna do it, we have to eat it already. So that's kind of why it's at the top. And then the third, for street resurfacing, mind you, that was before the draft report that we got this afternoon. We haven't digested that, but that may mean that gets bumped back up But this was last week and the report came in today, so it's still, those are the general things, but generally what we look at is in order of priority, the strategic plan. And then we look at, the sub-plan stuff, so whether it's like master plan, asset management plan, so on, so we kind of use those to direct us. Any direction on, those priorities, if there's switches for us to be able to know, what the general pulse is, we don't expect firm decisions because the numbers aren't in front of you, the contracts are not out to tender. This is just to guide us in some general direction, in terms of what we would bring back to you and what you'd like to see. And then there's obviously the risk that property tax revenue will be lower than 2%. Again, we're reasonably comfortable, I should say, or would say, in terms of where we think we'll be at. But there are a number of factors that we can't predict in terms of sales and what the difference is in those properties that will require additional direction on reductions in the operating budget if we're in that scenario. If there are some, then by all means, we'd welcome them now, but we anticipate if we get there, we come back with something more formal in terms of concrete numbers. So if you look at the next slide, this is really other than just general feedback in terms of priorities, what we're anticipating kind of proceeding with. In that, there's essentially four items, but that we maintain our 2025 tax rate, that we standardize the former LSD rates or subunits, so our, what will hopefully be called outside, tax rate to the lowest current former LSD. Most will not notice a reduction in their tax rate because it is so minimal, but that is generally what we're trying to do, or what we will try to do. To proceed with our modifications as presented, which includes prioritizing River Road as mentioned. And then, as mentioned in the last slide, our reallocations. So I already have those in opposite order as the last slide. As you can see, we've been going back and forth on some of these changes. But then, any other, information, recommendations, comments, feedback, what have you, as we prepare for October committee of the whole. So, I didn't mention it on the timeline slide, but we get our assessments in mid-October and come to committee of the whole with the finalized draft budget then. So I would say we have now what's a half-baked budget in terms of there's still a number of assumptions, but by that date in October committee of the whole, the service commission's budget is approved, we have closed tenders, we have updated costing on projects, we have our tax base assessment, and we come with something more formal. But right now we are just looking for that general direction. Based on the fact that we've done a number of cost reduction exercises and anticipate a few more in the coming weeks before we get those assessments. So with that, the last slide is just for questions. Happy to answer any questions. No real motion or recommendation.
No,
more
we
so
don't
over-
go with additional information.
100%, yeah, 100%.
One thing I would like to see done, preferably before 2020, or during 2026, is at least one or two of the dry hydrants. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it is, they're cutting everywhere.
Yeah.
I understand. I don't mind that we have to pay additionally to do it or borrow for it. But to me, it is a fundamental necessity if we're going to have drier summers, that we are going to have a problem with water at a certain point for fire.
One piece that I will mention is the new station has increased capacity on site for water storage, so
Fair enough.
there's and kind of my question, and I said it tongue in cheek when we were on site last week, was, well, we haven't had rain to fill the rainwater cistern. It's been filled 3 times in the rain that we've had this summer.
Well,
So that's crazy. So now that everything is functioning, that water can then go to the storage cistern. And the intent is to maintain that as well through both stormwater and refilling from the retention pond. So that increases in the end when the retention pond is able to be used. That will be dry most of the time in summers like this, but it increases about 10 times over the current storage that we have here. Doesn't solve the dry hydrant situation, nor does it solve the location issue, depending on where the fires are. So I would say we can definitely explore that. I have no idea how much it will cost.
As I'm saying,
to be honest.
figure
Yeah.
We have engineering services with which to figure that out.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would like to see done.
Related to that, we have water storage here in this building.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Will they still have access to that?
They will, yeah, they will. Depending on when and how they get access to it. So that it's in the garage right now. So that, like, we're not taking that tank out. So logistically, how that would work, I don't have an answer for it. But it is, the tank will still be here, I guess, is my short answer. Yeah.
On that topic, he talked about a new portable pump that would be better effective and better serving for the firefighters.
More rapidly filling the tank.
More rapidly, and my understanding is there was a funding option there that it would
From
be
the
funded.
association.
The association.
Yeah, so I think that should be,
Explored,
we're
yeah.
cutting right now, so we need to
Yeah.
find other avenues to be able to
But
help
with,
them be more efficient.
with all the firefighting that's going on, I wouldn't be surprised if there's provincial or federal funding for some of this stuff as well, to deal with some of this dry.
That was talked
yeah.
on the weekend, depending on the timing of it all.
I think based on what we're seeing with
Again, I don't know all the ins and outs, I'm just saying, I'd like to see that on there if it can happen.
we will, we'll
Just find out
explore.
the cost.
We'll explore, yeah, what some of those options might be and bring those forward. I guess I'll put the question back to you is, what do we cut to put it there?
Again.
I think we have to get the cost first, then we'd have to.
But hypothetically,
Whether we cut or whether we have to
Right,
increase to pay for it, or
Increase the tax
And
rate?
increase.
tax rate, because that's frozen, isn't it?
No.
no,
Quite frankly, if it makes sense to increase the tax rate to do so, then I will see it done. I don't have a problem with that.
That was one of my,
One cost first and then we'll.
But I want to know the cost first and what is the most reasonable locations to put them in. But even if we had to borrow for it, I don't have a problem with that, because it'll pay for itself.
okay, yes, noted. So, yeah, I don't have any.
It's a hypothetical, so we get that
Yeah,
information.
More information.
so my question is more of a rant than a question, if that's all right. So I just feel like it's really important, because we're gonna have to do communication that says, we were able to decrease the budget and we're operating with all of these cuts, but I think that it's important that we communicate, like, that's because we've cut service at this point. It's not because we had fluff in the budget that we could cut and now we can make it work. You're gonna struggle, a new council's gonna come in and they can't do anything. So I think it's really important that we're communicating. This is not because we had fluff in the budget, it's because we've cut your level of service, residents, and our staff are gonna struggle. And we can't do anything, thanks to the provincial government.
That's a perfect rant.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
And I just feel like, if you come back to us and say that our revenues are lower than that 2% that you're budgeting, like, I think we have to consider a tax increase. Because I don't see how there's any more room to cut. Plus, we want to,
Well, there is
you know what I mean?
So we've already submitted numbers to the union municipalities, other municipalities are doing that as well jointly. There is gonna be some key messaging exactly
Right.
on that line, collectively representing 94% of the population. I'm not gonna give the numbers from other municipalities, but Councilor Bannister heard a few that are significant, what it's going to mean.
Yeah.
So it's not just us, but it'll be coming from all angles. It was also voiced that unfortunately, if you talk about shift funding, municipalities that can tap into a lot of things, you have to have money to be able to tap into to do projects. So unfairly, communities that got, and by that, kudos to communities that got half funding.
Mhm.
But if you got half funding, you've got money, you're gonna be driving forward to tap into shift funding to do these things. Well, it's unfairly positioning yourselves against each other. And that was talked about as well. So
Yeah.
Totally agree, but there was gonna be collaborative messaging on that. No question.
which is part of, I'll speak to that kind of in our next agenda item, or again, so we're in second next, I guess, the last one for tonight, but on that piece too, just one, if council members, we had a similar conversation last year during budget, when conversations were had on, could we lower the rate for 2025? And our caution was in 2024, when the rate was increased, that was not to buffer spending, it was to
Right.
catch up historically
Exactly.
and to adjust to the realities that we are in as a municipality. And so I think just to go back to that conversation last year and stress the importance of that decision, because that's the challenge with our expenses being so fixed. So we have such limited variable funding to reallocate. We can't tell the RCMP, sorry, we're not spending the extra 4%. We can't tell NB Power, sorry, we're not paying our extra, like, all of those things are fixed, so. That's some of the conversations we've had in recent years, in the last couple of years in particular. This is a good example as to why.
It is, the key messaging that is going across the board, because if you look at a lot of the projects that, not just our community, but every community will be doing, a lot of them are gonna grind to a halt, which is not gonna be good for the economy. You're going to see job layoffs across multiple sectors or tradespeople going down the province to do jobs. Those are the key messaging, because again, the rent, hopefully the premier will watch this. This assessment freeze is going to cause turmoil. There's not a lot of.
But to that point, the other argument will be that revenues have increased over the last few years. Property assessments have increased over the last few years. Tax rates have increased over the last few years.
Except that they didn't do a new funding model from this balance.
That's what people are gonna tell you, that you've been giving, they can see it on their tax bill.
100%, and
So
our,
therefore,
No question.
they're gonna say,
Except that they haven't given a new funding model, and
I don't think people care.
they don't. They don't.
Frankly.
I think
They
it's
will
zero
care,
percent.
they will care when they start seeing that the roads aren't being done, that the work is not.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing that. People want their cake and eat. I'm not, I can't
Because,
argue with that.
because there's going to be increases, even the unknown of diesel costs, asphalt, all the things that can impact this.
Yes, it's only going up in the future.
the challenge is that, yes,
Many local people were employed by a lot of projects were done in southeast New Brunswick, and that's could dry up.
the challenge that we have is we're at the bottom of the total pole, so it makes it very.
Oh, I understand. My industry, I'm in the same position.
Yeah, 100%.
Price taker.
But, yeah.
Okay, well, good job, and we'll look forward to more information and,
Yeah, so our intent is to come forward October committee of the whole with a finalized draft. We'll be able to run through some of the specific numbers, give a firm outlook of where we're at, but we'll try to work on some updates in the meantime, maybe on some of these key things.
And you include in the numbers that you provide us, what the tax rate would be if we carried on with our strategic plan.
I can tell you right now,
Oh, that's an interesting question.
But I think that's an important number that
Be 6% higher, wouldn't it?
our residents need to know. They need to know what we've cut out of it.
Oh, you're right. It was probably-
about 3.12 cents is what it would be. So that's based on, that's a rough number, don't quote me on that, but let's say that. Depends on number of variables, are they shared costs, not shared costs, what are we deferring? But yeah, that's about what you'll be looking at when you take 250,000 as a number. And then divide it by how much 1 cent is in terms of revenue for 2025. Give or take.
with that, we'll move on to item 4.7, a follow-up to the previous meeting we had on the levels of fruits.
So this has been on, this is probably the item that we've punted down the agenda the most. It's the first thing that gets pulled from our agenda. So it's been kind of waiting to get on the council docket. It's a strategic plan item from 2024. And I will also say, to my error, it was sitting for approval on my end on East Drive. And I didn't realize until this afternoon. So my apologies for that. But essentially, what it is there's a memo and a corresponding attachment, which is a part of our ongoing work, I would say, to essentially put in place our governance structure and outline those things clearly and transparently. But the strategic plan item is to identify and define what our levels of service are as a municipality. So what is proposed is today's level of service. So what we're already offering. This is not a fundamental earth-shattering thing. It's just putting things to paper. And the intent of levels of service is if we were having this conversation, or if we had the level of service conversation last year, we would be able to say, we are affecting this level of service, this level of service, and this level of service based on the cuts we're proposing in our budget. So that is one example. Another example is the public works world is the easiest in terms of level of service because it's the most noticeable. So for our snow clearing tender, right now in our contract, we have levels of service that dictate what is class A, class B, class C, class D, and when they get plowed during snowstorms. So if council says we want our streets plowed every time there's a centimeter of snow, well, that's a significant increase in the level of service, which comes with a corresponding dollar value. So that's the intent of having them. Again, as mentioned, it's not an earth-shattering thing. It outlines our existing levels of service across municipal departments. And it provides us as a tool for our annual reporting to say what we met and did not meet. Again, for future budgeting. So, knowing that council just probably has not had a chance to see them, I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can add it to the October committee of the whole meeting, or we can make sure we just have more time for discussion at our next, regular council meeting. The intent, let's say if council had it over the weekend with the rest of their package, would be to approve it in principle tonight and then ratify it at our October meeting, but maybe we can just leave more room for conversation at that meeting, just knowing that it's a bit.
I think so, a lot here.
Yeah, no, it's not a, it's not a short piece. And like I said, it's what we've been punting it since, I think, January.
It's a lot here we want to do around.
Austin, can you do, when we're talking about this, can you use the same terminology that you've asked us to look at and use inside and outside variables when you're providing this information, please?
What do you mean, sorry?
Well, because we're saying the level of services,
Yeah.
so I'd like it to define for our members, our residents,
What is defined?
inside and outside.
Okay, good point, yeah,
Okay.
most would be, like the general principle would be most of the, public works except for, recreation, parks and playgrounds is titled on here, would be inside specific, everything else, well, including waste collection, that's also outside, but we'll go through and
I
we'll
think
highlight
it
it.
would be, I
Yeah.
think it's beneficial to highlight.
Still,
Good point.
I'll still state for the record, I still dislike inside versus outside.
We had that conversation too, yeah, it's
That's right in here.
I just like the term
term.
inside versus outside.
Cool kids versus. What?
Core, non-core.
and we had to give a name, we did have
City folk versus.
that's what most municipalities use, a lot of them.
Central and outlying areas, I mean, there's whatever.
I just,
I agree, I understand what you're saying.
I know what it means,
Inside
and
maybe.
I know most people don't care, but
And most people won't,
for whatever
No.
reason, I care.
yeah, won't, we can still call it informally, former LSD, which is probably what we'll do, but, at a certain point, people will not know what an LSD was, like. at a
They didn't know what an LSD was to begin with,
Yeah.
come on.
But yeah, good point, Councilor Bannister, on identifying that for the level of service, that's an easy addition.
Thank you.
Are we're all good on deferring and having time to go through this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, it's important.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't have the energy to go through that.
Well, it's a good document that's going to go forward.
Yes.
It's long. It's long.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item 4.8 property assessment.
So this is
Read
the,
that.
this is the agenda item that I referred to a few times in the budget presentation. The mayor referenced it in terms of some conversations happening at the UMB level, but essentially UMB has prepared an advocacy toolkit, for lack of a better term, on the assessment freeze. They've provided a number of public elements. The plan is to release their news release and communication tomorrow. And have municipalities draft and send letters. Some have already sent them. It's just that this is our first meeting since we were given the toolkit. And then as part of that, they'll have a public campaign in terms of what this means for municipalities. Like the mayor mentioned, there's many that have much larger budget impacts in terms of what the assessment freeze will mean for them. Most of those have larger operating budgets, but in the end, what is recommended here is UMB's draft letter. We've added our Salisbury numbers essentially. You'll see that it references that number in terms of what it means for us, that 428,000. It references the cost paid to Service New Brunswick. So in 2025, it's 171,000 just to undertake assessment services. It has information on the provincial infrastructure deficit and adds our infrastructure deficit annual spending shortfall, which is already 357,000. And again, that doesn't include the fact that we've gotten a report hot off the press today that recommends that we should be doubling our street resurfacing amount. It adds a specific, percentage of our revenue that's based on property tax, which the provincial average is about 85%, ours is 91. That's the gist of what is specific to Salisbury, within their letter. The intent is that it gets sent to, respective, MLAs and, shared with UMB as part of their ongoing efforts to beat the consistent drum across the province. And all that, on that last piece, I promise, is UMB and AFMNB, the Francophone counterparts, have done this toolkit together, so in joint partnership. One of the biggest shortfalls municipally is that we used to have 3 associations, AFMNB, UMB, and 8 cities. So 8 cities is now part of UMB, and they've increased to a great degree the level of collaboration with AFMNB. The province used to be able to poke holes and say, one is saying this and one is saying the other thing, so municipalities can't agree, therefore we're just gonna do this. But now everyone's beating the same drum, so that is a big deal as well, just from a intergovernmental affairs perspective, I guess, for lack of a better term. So with that, there's a recommended letter on the floor with a recommendation, and then happy to answer any questions or make any edits before we sign it.
I'll move that council direct the mayor to sign the letter as drafted and direct administration to forward the letter and participate in UMNB and AFMNB's ongoing advocacy campaign with respect to the government of New Brunswick's property assessment freeze, given the financial pressures that this places on municipalities.
By Deputy Mayor Molina, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion?
Can we, around the cost that we bear for assessment,
Mhm.
can we add stronger wording and say we should be refunded for that if they're not gonna use the assessments that are done?
That's a good point.
No other municipalities have asked.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, that 171,000 is just based on 2025, so it will be a bit more, but yeah, good point.
Do it.
I'd argue that the spike protection shouldn't be eligible for the freeze.
For what?
I agree with that too.
For the assessment freeze, spike protected over the last number of years, should not be eligible for a freeze.
We would not be in this, we would not be having this conversation if they were exempt, yeah, because our 5-year plan was just looking at spike protection, so.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So I know
Like, the whole point of spike protection is to spread it out over time.
Right,
Exactly.
my property is years away from being caught up.
right.
Exactly,
So it's,
but that's why
And
the
fear
small
that
increase over time,
This freeze is taken off.
that's the whole point of spike protection. If they want to continue with spike protection, then they should allow that to not be frozen. So that to me is what should actually be said in all of this.
So there's already phased in measures with the spike protection mechanism, we can add wording to that effect, I think that's based on the silence, there was kind of general consensus.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. That's the whole point, is to spread it over time. If you're not allowed to spread it over time, then have it all happen at once.
Well, again, what happens in 2027? Do we pay 20%?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Whatever,
but that's-
that's what everybody's wondering.
But that's the problem. Then you have that 6% deficit
Yeah.
into the future that's not
People
there.
won't even be mad
over
when
time.
2027.
Because you'll never catch, it'll be so much longer to catch
And that's
up.
that's the things that haven't brought the premier by UMB
Yeah.
previously.
It's a compounding cut.
I just think that, I don't know if any of you guys were able to attend, but I attended the UMNB, webinar that they had last week about this,
Yeah.
being rolled out. And I just think we should really thank them, like, what a great association for us to be in. They have really
Yeah.
done a lot of work with AFMNB. I can't say that, it's so hard. AFMNB? Anyway, they've done a lot of work, and I think, we as municipalities should be really grateful for them sticking up for us.
I think we've had that conversation previously about some, like, the thing we've always said, we wish that UMB would do, and it was always advocacy related,
Yeah.
and they've definitely.
Oh, they've
stepped it up
gained
big time, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great.
And the thing about that is, again, it's a unified voice. The one thing with government, in the past, they've taken, whether it be FMB, UMB, and it did the divide and conquer, where you don't actually represent all the municipalities, well, now we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it is everybody, it's 94% of the province, and it's united voice, and it's united on this.
But and residents do not understand the impact of
Right.
that freeze.
No, and the province, I'm gonna say purposely, well, because it's
Yeah.
easier to push the blame down to the local level.
Yeah.
The government's not losing any of their revenue, right?
Right.
they've taken a win at our expense.
Right, and we fully expect, like, we will to a certain degree. We're not gonna post it as much as UMB, but we'll participate in their kind of on, like, we'll add Salford specific pieces to some of their, social media pieces. We'll try to do our very best to explain what that means to residents, but, the likelihood is that there will still be frustration. Understandably, we get it, but we'll be an ally in that work and try to communicate that as best.
The sad reality is when the assessments come out, and this has been the talk at some of our UMD meetings, there are still gonna be people very upset because it's not a true blanket. There's gonna be people with increases and.
We'll take the blame for that.
But unfortunately, the public, when they see freezing assessments, they don't get into the fact that if you bought a new house or it's all these changes, that you are going to have an increase. And unfortunately, we will again be on at our local level despite the promises. So, okay, thank you very much. Really, you need a motion?
Or you did most
Yeah,
of
but we have sort of
Yeah.
Okay, so, with that, all in favor? Reminded, motion carried. There's no closed session for this evening. Move on to item number 6, Mayor and Council statements. Just very briefly, Councilor Bannister and I attended session at the UNB and Member Cook on the weekend. Highly noted about agritourism and creating experiences, which I think was very evident there. But we did, Councilor Bannister, I chatted on the side just about our community and the community experiences here. Particularly coming up, we have our Fall Harvest Festival, the second one coming up this weekend. We have the big gourmets. We have equally agritourism opportunities here as well. We need to take advantage of, and there's so many good things happening here. So that's all I really have to say. We're looking forward to this weekend after the RSC meetings to take that in. Does any other council statements? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilor Thorne and Councilor Bannister, all in favor? Very minded, motion carried.